Test, 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 test. Hello, hello. How's it going, everybody? I am going to actually check to make sure that YouTube is streaming this time. I don't do another intro without realizing that I'm talking into the void. Okay, yes, it looks like it is actually going. So, hello, folks. I hope you are doing well this evening. Thank you so much for stopping by. I see Saria, I see Darth Magog. Hope you guys are doing well. Would love to know how your weekend's going. Darth Magog, I wanted to... Oh, thank you. Good. I appreciate the confirmation that we're live. I wanted to let you know I showed my partner a clip from your recent video on like the 10 weirdest beliefs of Jehovah's Witnesses, and she's hooked. Like, she really enjoyed it. So we watched part of it together, and I'm gonna watch some of the Caleb and Sophia stuff with her as well when when our schedules permits in the coming weeks. We're gonna be a little busy, but then afterwards, she's eager to see more. So we should have a new subscriber coming your way. We're continuing to enjoy the content. I think it'll be a little harder to persuade her to get into the Battlefront stuff, but you never know. Maybe I'll make a convert out of her yet. Yeah, I appreciate Saria as well, the trip down memory lane with the knowledge stuff, and I hadn't thought about that in a while. What's his name, like Ty Lopez or something, something like that. Yeah, that that certainly was a moment in human history, wasn't it? Back when, you know, H3H3 we're still like doing comedy and not whatever it is they're doing these days. I guess it's a form of comedy. Speaking of which, I just saw Jimmy Carr a little while ago, and then I saw David Cross. I saw what's his name, Patton Oswalt. Like, over the past few years, I've had a chance to see some stand-up, which has been really nice. I don't know if you guys are into stand-up comedy at all, but depending on your sensibilities, I would gently recommend any of those shows, but they come with caveats. Like Jimmy Carr, when I saw him, had a lot of funny stuff, but when he got to like trans jokes and when he got to certain jokes about, like, you know, using ableist slurs and stuff, it just kind of read to me as like, oh, so he just kind of he's one of those comedians who just kind of wants to say whatever, you know. And wants to be able to like get away with saying whatever, and it's because it's cool and edgy to just say whatever. So there were parts of it that I kind of clammed up at, but others were pretty fun. So I don't know, might be worth seeing if they're in town if you're into that sort of thing. Sorry says I'm doing a complete reread of A Song of Ice and Fire, and God, it's so good, especially after watching that adaptation that the show is currently reading A Dance with Dragons again, and it's so good. Yeah, it's funny. Based on our conversation about Daenerys and stuff in Discord, I went back and I decided to, or like I had some videos deep in my like watch later playlist that were something along the lines of like, I think the channel is like Alt Swift X or something like that, and the title was like the real Tyrion Lannister, or like how Jon Snow in the books differs from the show. Because I don't know the series all that well, but I wanted to see like some further examples of what you were talking about how the characters differed. And I got to a video where he was talking about the differences between Theon Greyjoy and like all the eldritch like Cthulhu shit he was getting up to in the books, and I was like, damn, I should read these. So I actually just started listening to the audiobook of the first book, and it's been fun so far. I really like that there's little details in the descriptions that don't really come across in the snow. Like in the intro scene where if I interpreted it correctly, like there's one of the Night's Watchmen who dies and then gets brought back as a White Walker, and then there's this description of like his gloved hand reached out and gently caressed the cheek of the other Night's Watchman, and then like reached down to strangle him, and there was warm blood on the glove, but the hand itself had already turned cold as ice. And I was like, oh, that's so chilling. There's so much that's like packed into that little moment. It was really good. Yeah, for that, it's fun to drive up here in my Hollywood Hills, but it's even better than this knowledge. You can't buy that. Um, that's a priceless moment in human history. Anyway, I love that you have like the inflections and everything down pat as well. So good, good job there. But yeah, let me do a quick intro and get started. So this is going to be part two of our revisiting Universal Naruto. And for people who who are just kind of joining at this point in the series, tonight we're going to be talking mostly about the Tsukuyomi and whether or not the Tsukuyomi creates like universes, whether they should be called parallel dimensions, parallel worlds. Basically, to give a very brief overview of the topic for folks who might just be joining in. Well, first of all, welcome. Thank you, everybody who's come back. Thank you, everybody who might be new, for taking the time to check this out. The argument here, which you may have heard if you've been in the Naruto Powerscaling community or like had an ear to the ground for that sort of stuff, is whether or not Naruto characters can scale to universal or universe level. If you're not familiar with that term, it's not really something that you're going to find within the manga or the anime itself. It's a power scaling term that refers to characters being able to, I'll just say in big air quotes, destroy the universe. And what I mean by that is that they have some kind of a feat or the potential to do a feat that is equivalent to destroying everything in the known universe. So that would mean, for example, I think Versus Battles Wiki defines it as generating an omnidirectional blast that destroys everything in the universe, including like black holes, planets, stars, other celestial bodies, etc. Different places have different definitions. Some people define it as an attack that simply spans the size of the universe, and you don't have to actually destroy everything in it. But the definitions that I've seen most consistently, most often, involve destruction. Now, keep in mind that you can be universal in a couple of different ways without technically actually having had to destroy a universe, or having like a big bomb type attack that means that you destroy a universe. So like Goku in Dragon Ball Z, as somebody mentioned in the previous stream, has never actually destroyed a universe, but he's relative to other characters who, or let's just say like galaxy level, right? Like Goku has never destroyed a galaxy, but if Broly is galaxy level and Goku is able to fight on par with Broly, you could probably say he scales to galaxy level, or that he has demonstrably some attacks that could potentially do the same thing because he's as strong as Broly, but we just never see him do that because obviously it would be out of character for Goku to do that. Now, Dragon Ball experts out there, what I said might not be accurate. I apologize. I don't know for sure if that's an accurate representation of the Broly interactions or whatever, but it's just an example to kind of illustrate the principle, right? Maybe another example would be this. Let's say that Naruto gets this attack that is so strong. He's like an ultra supernova Rasen Shuriken that lets him blow up a galaxy, as an example, right? It could blow up the Milky Way. and then he throws that at Kaguya. Or so he throws it. Sorry, he throws it at the at the Milky Way, and it blows up the Milky Way like something out of Gurren Lagann. And you could say he's like galaxy level based on that, right? So let's say Kaguya jumps in front of it, and she manages to tank the attack with her durability. Then you might say that she has like galaxy level durability. And then if Sasuke comes up with his sword, his Kusanagi, and manages to cut Kaguya in half, well, he's just executed an attack that got through galaxy level durability. So, through a certain definition, his sword is also galaxy level. But obviously, it's not the case that if he just swings his sword in the air, it's going to have the same effect on a galaxy as if Naruto makes this massive fucking supernova galaxy spanning explosion, right? So, there's different definitions of the term universal, but at the end of the day, the most important thing to remember is that we're talking about energy expenditure. One way or another, we're talking about the amount of power that that a character can muster up, and that's why we have these tiers like universe level or mountain level or city block level, kitchen knife level. We're talking about like if a character exists in this, that, or the other tier, then they can at minimum output this amount of power. And like we talked about before, but just to be clear, saying a character is mountain level doesn't really mean much unless you know what the size of a mountain is. Because obviously mountains can be different sizes, they can be made of different things, they can have different shapes. Same thing with planetary, like Pluto was considered a planet for a while, but Pluto is smaller than some of the moons in our solar system. So like if you said that a character was only planet level, and then another character was only moon level, and you tried to say that the planetary character was necessarily stronger than the moon level character, but the planetary character blew up Pluto, and that was his maximum output, and the lunar character blew up like whatever the largest moon in our solar system is. I forget. Is it like Ganymede or Europa? I'm sorry, I don't remember off the top of my head. But that one being bigger than Pluto, in that case, being moon level is more impressive than being planetary, even though we think of moons as being smaller than planets as a general rule. So this is all just to say, for a Naruto character to be universal, they need to demonstrate some sort of feat where they are outputting the energy equivalent of destroying or creating not just any universe, not a universe of any arbitrary size, but specifically a universe that's at least the energetic equivalent of our universe. So I really want to emphasize too, and I'll jump back to chat in just a second, but I really want to emphasize, I think our human brains, mine included, of course, struggle with really comprehending the size and scale of the universe. It's not something that we really spend all that much time thinking about. I think most of us, I'm sorry, as probably an exception, Magog as well, is probably an exception to this, but it's really hard to wrap your brain around even like the concept of a million things, let alone trillions, quadrillions. Put it this way, right? There are more than 1 trillion stars probably in our unknown universe. There's more than 1 trillion planets. There's more than 1 trillion black holes, like vastly more. Probably more like quadrillions or quintillions of those things. So in order for Naruto to even, or a Naruto character to even be in the vicinity, in the ballpark of being universal, they need to have an energy output that is equivalent to creating or destroying 1 trillion black holes, 1 trillion planets, and 1 trillion stars, just to get started. In reality, that's nowhere near close to what they would need to be universal. But if they can't even get up to that level, then they're not going to be universal either. So as we're going through this conversation, if you have like doubts, if you're skeptical about things, that's great. Skepticism is highly encouraged here, but just try asking yourself that question. If I give you a feat of like Obito creating a parallel space, ask yourself, okay, did he use the energy at bare minimum equivalent to creating 1 trillion suns, 1 trillion planets, and 1 trillion black holes to make this space? Does that make sense, right? Like if Naruto punches Momoshiki and they're both supposed to be universal level, right? Did Naruto just punch with the same force equivalent that it would take to destroy 1 trillion suns, 1 trillion planets, and 1 trillion black holes? For starters, like as the round one to creating a universe. So that being said, let me check chat really quick, and then I'll talk briefly about the excuse me, about the topic overview and what exactly the Tsukuyomi, like how the Tsukuyomi is relevant to any of this stuff. So, Bro had a bookshelf in his garage. Yeah, exactly. That's, the number one most popular place to read books is immediately right after you pop out of the Lambo. The first thing you do is just reach for a book, and if the bookshelf isn't right there, I mean, like, time is money, and the true currency is knowledge, and so keeping yourself in as close proximity to books as soon as you like enter a space where you could potentially read them, that's that's only going to help accelerate your acquisition of knowledge and hence money. I think, didn't it, not to like ruin the magic or whatever, but didn't it turn out that that whole place that he was in and the car and everything was a rental? Like he just spent 10 grand or something to rent that place and a couple Lamborghinis for like a day or two. Or that might have just been part of like the slander against him. I don't know, but that's, I remember that kind of being part of the discussion at the time, which is kind of funny. Um, so Darth Magog says, can we just talk about how much energy that would, yeah, that would require, like how by default you'd have to wipe out a planet just by generating that type of energy. Yeah, exactly. So the rebuttal that I've heard to that sort of thing in the past is like, um, within the constraints of a fictional universe, a an author might want to convey that a given character has the ability to generate a universe busting attack, but not actually want to see everything around it get destroyed. So, for example, I forget exactly where this is in Dragon Ball. I think it's in like the Majin Buu saga, and like Super Saiyan 3 Goku is fighting against Majin Buu, and it seems like they're going all out. Maybe Goku's holding back; he usually is. But they are punching each other so hard that it's creating shockwaves that's causing the whole planet to shake, something like that, right? So if Goku were to turn around and punch the Earth itself, he might be able to shatter it. Or if he turned around and like fired a Kamehameha at the planet, considering, assuming that Namek is bigger than the Earth, which I think it is, and assuming that SSJ3 Goku scales to Frieza, which I'm assuming he does, then Goku should be able to blow the fuck out of the Earth with a Kamehameha if it's aimed the right way, right? But it might be the case that he fires, and I think there are a couple instances of characters being like, hey Vegeta, hey Goku, don't fire that energy blast like near the Earth because you're going to destroy the planet if it misses. I think there's a couple instances like that, like when Goku's going up against Cell, when Vegeta's going up against Android 19 or something. I think there's stuff like that, right? But they still want to show the clash. They want to imply the power, but the author doesn't literally want the world to get ripped apart. So there's a little bit of a concession made for the sake of the drama of the fight. That being said, it kind of it's easier to excuse or to, I guess, like suspend your disbelief with Dragon Ball because we do have multiple instances of characters saying things like, hey, that would have blown up the whole planet if you hadn't missed. There is a precedent of characters actually blowing up planets, like Frieza starting the chain reaction. If you I think you might have mentioned that last time, that maybe some people see it as Frieza started a chain reaction that destroyed the planet as opposed to blowing it up on Namek, but then he like blew up Planet Vegeta, I think, just with a planetary DC attack, right? So when you consider all of those things, the universe itself has, like the fictional universe, the IP itself has like a consistent through line of demonstrating feats on that level, so then you can more easily reconcile it. But when we get to stuff like Naruto and the War Arc, people are absolutely shocked and flabbergasted that the Ten Tails can blow up a landmass which appears to be, to my eyeballing, it may be country level, right? Like, and they find this completely shocking and unprecedented. So that kind of adds context to the suggestion that Obito with the Seven Tails is outputting, or not the Seven Tails, with Biju's number 1 through 7 in an incomplete Getomazo, that Obito is outputting the energy of trillions of suns, black holes, and planets. Like, meaning to destroy or create them, right? Like that, if it's shocking for everybody in the universe to be able to see a country level feat, and Obito himself is like struggling to control the Ten Tails, and even like him and Madara are having a little bit of difficulty like getting the Ten Tails to do what they want, does it really make sense that that motherfucker's belching out the power equivalent of trillions of suns? I'll just say that for simplicity, because I don't even think we can clear one sun, let alone a trillion suns worth of energy. Right, so there's a certain point at which suspension of disbelief just becomes it's delusional, frankly. Darth Magog says Dragon Ball also has the benefit of non-Earth planets to damage, like the time Goku punched out King Kai's planet. Yeah, that's a good point. And those different planets, like King Kai's planet, also has like different gravity, right? So, it seems like Namek is larger than the Earth, but has a comparable like G or like surface gravity. So it's you know, once we get especially into the territory of like traveling between different planets in space, those different planets can have different properties, and that can be a way of exploring like larger feats like that. Also, the ability to bring planets back from having been destroyed allows for more like large scale destructive things to happen, um, without permanently changing the total trajectory of the whole like narrative and all that. So that definitely makes sense. 1 second. Okay, so I want to just give a very quick overview of what I'd like to talk about tonight, what I'm hoping to accomplish. Last week, we responded to a video by Key, and I think we'll go back to that eventually. But for tonight, rather than doing like a response reaction type thing, I want to take that video as like an inspiration, but I want to just kind of focus our discussion a little bit and talk about the Tsukuyomi. If you are a casual reader of Naruto, meaning like a normal, well-adjusted member of society type reader of Naruto, and not like a weirdo power scaler like myself, it will probably seem very strange to you that people think that Naruto characters are capable of like outputting trillions of suns worth of power, and I agree. I think that response is the correct and healthy one. You may be wondering where these arguments are coming from in the first place. How the fuck are people even considering that this stuff might be true? Like, where the fuck are these arguments even coming from? And going over this stuff over the past couple of weeks, and also going back earlier in the year, there are really two main sources of the arguments, right? There's the Tsukuyomi style of argumentation, and then there's the Kaguya argumentation. For the Tsukuyomi stuff, the argument is basically this. In the movie Road to Ninja, and don't worry, I'm not going to summarize the whole thing. Like, in the movie Road to Ninja, Obito uses the power of the 7 Biju inside the Geto Mazo to create a dream world. And then he basically, like, with a version of the infinite Tsukuyomi that is more limited, that he calls, of course, the limited Tsukuyomi, and he uses this to quote-unquote transport Naruto and Sakura to this dream world. They fight, they do stuff there, they come back, and the idea is that since Obito created this world, and you could term that world a parallel universe, universal, Obito is universal, what? Right? So that's basically like the idea is he creates this universe, he creates this parallel space, you can call it a universe, you can see stars in the sky, so he must have like created a real physical space. And then in Naruto X Boruto Storm Connections, the video game, there's another character called Nanashi, who, and by the way, just as a heads up, we are going to be spoiling the plot of Naruto X Boruto Connections, so I just wanted to be upfront about that in case anybody is planning to play through that story. But I'm not going to spoil everything right now. Just to give the broad strokes overview, this character called Nanashi creates an alternate space using the Tsukuyomi, her own version, which I think is called the Engraved Tsukuyomi, and basically creates like this virtual reality space that people can go into, and it's like its own universe. Universal, she's universal. And so other characters who fight her are also scaled to universal. Other characters who scale to Obito are universal as well. That's the first line of argumentation. And to really dispute that, we're going to have to talk about the Tsukuyomi, what it is, whether or not it creates real spaces, whether or not it's a dream world, and go through that and talk about how that all works. And then next time, we're going to talk about the Kaguya line of argumentation, because that's the other big one, is like Kaguya apparently can create dimensions at will. The dimensions have stars and have planets in them, so that sounds a whole lot like a universe to me, so she must be creating universes. She can shove the entire Naruto universe out of the way to make room for her dimensions, so that's a universe level feat, right? So all that stuff will be next episode. Tonight we'll be focused on the Tsukuyomi. Let me check chat real quick, and then we can kind of dive in to the dream world together. Sorry says, I feel like using Dragon Ball isn't a very good comparison because Dragon Ball kind of just can fix things with the Dragon Balls, not really limiting Toriyama as much. Yeah, absolutely. So like, that's kind of what I was trying to say about even if Goku or one of the other characters accidentally blows up the world, like when he's trying to get rid of Cell, right? He does the instant transmission with Cell to King Kai's planet, and then like blows them up there. And he's like, "I'm sorry, but we can bring you back, and we can bring your planet back with the Dragon Balls." So it's kind of like they can retcon, like they have a sort of diegetic retcon button almost, in the form of the Dragon Balls, which lets them get away with stuff like that. So yeah, I do think there's a bit more. And as far as I'm aware, the Dragon Balls themselves are never made like a part of the magic system, so to speak. In other words, even stuff like the Izanagi, where we're talking about like rewriting reality or whatever, is still put into the overall framework of, no, this is still chakra. It follows the same, like, quote unquote, scientific rules of the Naruto universe as any other jutsu. Even like, spiritual energy discharge, which, like the shadow possession or the mind transfer technique, they're still using the same rules, right? It's still chakra. It's still like the same basic system. In Dragon Ball, I think there's shit that kind of breaks the rules like that, like fucking the devil guy in part 1, and like the beam of light attack that he has that will cause people's souls to expand if their hearts aren't pure. Like, I don't think that's ever really made a part of like a concrete system in the same way. So I think Dragon Ball just like has, as its intrinsically as its own universe, like more room to play around with shit like that, if that makes sense. But yeah, so it's just kind of a way to illustrate the contrast between those two. But that's a good point. Saria says, I think a better example would be something like Boros from One Punch Man, or maybe the Nucky from Scooby-Doo. I'm not familiar with that second one. Was Boros the guy at the end of season 1 who was like that cosmic sort of alien character who shows up and then they fight? Or was that Genos? Or wait, no, I'm getting... Genos was the robot guy, right? Shit, I have to go back and rewatch that. But if it is the guy at the end of season 1, then yeah, I think that would be a better example. But like that's a good point too. That like if Genos has planet level or like galaxy level durability, and Saitama like punches him, then he might be able to overcome that and kill him in one hit. But if Saitama like looks at the Andromeda galaxy and then punches in its general direction, is he necessarily going to just eradicate it, right? I mean, I don't know. I haven't read anything, or like I've only seen like season 1 and part of season 2. I haven't seen anything that indicates that would be how that works. So that might be a good way of illustrating the difference between like DC and AP. But I also don't know how magical, like how hard magic versus soft magic the One Punch Man universe is. Like, is there a concrete rule set for why Saitama can do that? Or is it just sort of like a magical thing where he can just, as long as he's taking things seriously, he can just literally kill anybody? I haven't gotten past, like, enough past season 1 to really know for sure. But let's see. One Punch Man also wipes up hundreds of stars. Okay, well, okay, well, that kind of answers that question then. So thank you for the preemptive clarification, Darth Magog. Zarya says, yeah, I know, but it's not very consistent. He does it in space, but on the planet, his serious punches never do this kind of damage, is what I mean. Yeah, so it seems like he can maybe like scale and focus his power based on the needs of the current part of the narrative or whatnot. Magog says, in Saitama's defense, he's also a gag manga character. Yeah, well, that's the other thing that comes up in Naruto, too. Like, there are definitely, like, gag moments in Naruto, including during the war, and sometimes I've heard some disagreement in debates about people, like, not knowing which things to like to just dismiss outright as being gags versus, I guess I don't know anything about like cartoon scaling, but there's some people who look at the cartoon abilities and apply like real world physics to them. So I've heard some people apply that perspective to Naruto too. Like, just because it's a gag doesn't mean that we shouldn't take it literally. Type thing, which, hey, more power to you. Darth Magog says, the Dragon Balls are kind of tied to the magic system in that they can't impact anybody unwillingly. That's objectively stronger than their creator. Again, sometimes, yeah. I think I remember that stipulation, but with the sometimes, like, I'm guessing that there are still exceptions to that rule. Okay, so as always, please feel free to chime in with any questions or comments or things you might want to go over. I'm gonna try to be slightly focused this evening, but that doesn't mean we can't chat and have an open discussion. And basically, what I tried to do for myself as an exercise over this past week was really try to remind myself of what the Tsukuyomi actually is, and I wanted to see if I could confirm or deny, based on evidence in the series and the manga itself, whether or not the Tsukuyomi is actually creating real spaces, and if so, how like wide or vast those spaces are. How do they scale power-wise, energy-wise, right? And so intuitively as a manga reader, I have not seen any evidence of like the phrase parallel universe, or I have not ever seen any character mention, with one exception that I should actually go and grab. Um, but I have not really seen anybody talk about, like in the series, we created a parallel universe. This is a new universe. Like if you go watch like Loki or something like that, the TV show, they'll very explicitly, very clearly talk about branching timelines and alternate universes, and characters can like meet up with alternate versions of themselves from different parts of the multiverse or whatever. There's Star Trek episodes where that is made extremely clear and explicit. That's never really mentioned here in Naruto, with one exception, which we'll talk about in just a second. So I wanted to try to reconcile this and to understand, where is the disconnect coming from. I think there are quite a few channels that I've seen cover this topic, and channels from content creators that I genuinely like and like respect their opinions and have enjoyed their content, or at the very least I will say that like they seem to me to be like sincere people who are like making content from a place of like good intentions, and yet they are repeating these arguments that I find so completely bizarre. Like no shade or anything, but just like such a completely divergent take on what I've seen in the series, and I want to understand where that disconnect is coming from and see what I can do to resolve it. And the best that I've been able to come up with, like I really do think that the problem here, the core issue here, is not even with the a misunderstanding of the functionality of the Tsukuyomi. I think people like basically get it. It's not even with calling the realms of the Tsukuyomi like a parallel dimension or a parallel universe, if you want to use that term. That actually kind of works in some cases, although I don't think it's the best term. I think it kind of works. Really what the problem is plugging in power scaling terminology where it doesn't belong. And to be clear, that doesn't mean that power scaling is bad, or that the term universe is stupid, or universe level is stupid, right? There are genuinely fictional universes out there where characters have universe level feats, or that scale all the way up from like wall level to like outerversal or boundless or whatever. Like these terms exist for a reason. There are universes and situations where those descriptors are accurate. But the problem, like I kind of hinted somewhat mockingly, I admit before, is being like, Obito created a quote-unquote universe. Wait a minute, universe, I know that word. There's a term called universal in VSB and CSAP or whatever definitions, so they must be the same thing, because obviously it's the same word, so it's the same kind of feat. And it's basically just like taking something from one place and putting it where it doesn't belong and expecting it to work the same. And so in order to try to explore that and try to reinforce that, my little homework assignment for myself for this week was to go through the series and just try to look for how many examples, if any, do we have of characters mentioning the term dream when referring to the Tsukuyomi. What descriptions do we actually get of the Tsukuyomi? And does anybody call it a universe? There are also other spaces that come up, right? Like other planes and other dimensions. Are those places ever called universes, and how do they scale? So let me make a note to myself really quick, and we're going to start with the Tsukuyomi, and then we're going to talk a little bit about Taiyuya's Genjutsu. We're going to talk about Orochimaru's transfer in space as well, very briefly. So going all the way back to part 1, the first time we see the Tsukuyomi is in chapter 141. And this time I did actually organize things from right to left. So it's like, as we're reading here, we're going to be going like this, like this, like this, like this. And as I click on the images, if you look at the tool or whatever this pop-up is called, you can see the page numbers. If anybody's curious, either like here as I'm talking live on stream, or if you're watching the VOD back and you want to know what pages these are from, just hit me up in the comments. I'll try to like click on stuff as I go so you can see, but I'm more than happy to point you to exactly where all this stuff is too. So the first time that we see the Tsukuyomi being used, it's of course by Itachi, and it's being used on Kakashi back in part 1, right? And so what we hear about this is that Itachi refers to this place as a special Sharingan Jutsu. He calls it the Tsukuyomi, the Nightmare Realm, okay? So it's referred to as the Nightmare Realm specifically. And then over here, we see, of course, this iconic and fucking chilling, like, brutal scene of Kakashi being stabbed and tortured while suspended here. And what Itachi says is, in the Tsukuyomi dreamscape, I completely control time, space, and even all substance. For the next 72 hours, you will be completely stabbed over and over again, right? And so, from the outside, what appears to be the case is that one moment Kakashi's doing just fine, and then at the very next moment, from Asuma's perspective, he's on the ground and he's yelling and he's exhausted, and Itachi's exhausted too. Kakashi says, I see 3 days in that realm in less than a moment passed in this one. So basically what happens here is that Itachi is using a genjutsu. Okay, a genjutsu is an illusory technique. It involves hypnosis, it involves suggestion, it involves using chakra to manipulate your opponent's like senses. You take control of their senses, and you make their brain experience something that you want them to. So Itachi basically pulls them into this quote-unquote space, this reality, this dream, but he's clear that it is a dream, right? He's clear that it is a nightmarish realm, and it's an illusory genjutsu space that he's controlling. Okay. There's a couple of other instances in which Itachi uses the Tsukuyomi, not very many, but one is when he encounters Sasuke. I think both as a kid, so this is in 147, this is in 145. So actually these are, I think, out of order. They're supposed to be over here. Sorry about that. But basically when Sasuke is a little kid and he finds Itachi slaughtering his village, technically speaking, this isn't explicitly called the Tsukuyomi, right? We just see the jutsu being used here called the Mangekyo Sharingan. So it's possible that this is just some other jutsu. But given the fact that we were just shown the Tsukuyomi over here, and we're shown like this kind of color inverted landscape, and we're shown the time loop, and then very quickly after that, Itachi uses this technique on Sasuke. And this is where, my guess based on all of that is that this is the Tsukuyomi. You could probably argue that this one might not be, because it's not specifically mentioned. This one over here, I think definitely is. So just to avoid any confusion, these two instances here, this one, as you can see, Sasuke is a little kid, so this happens during the Uchiha village massacre, and here is Itachi showing him the murder of his parents. And then this is later on when Itachi and Kisame are like going to collect Naruto, and they bump into Sasuke and Jiraiya. And here, I think it's pretty clear that he's using the Tsukuyomi on Sasuke. And what he does is he's like replaying these events for Sasuke over and over again. Sasuke is stuck in this time loop and basically forced to experience these things over and over again. So, you know, based on what we've seen so far, maybe it's worth asking ourselves the question, does it look like the series it has given us any reason to believe that when Itachi creates these spaces, that they are actual physical real spaces with real people who are sentient in them? So when he creates this time space, or this dream world, or whatever you want to call it, alternate universe, is he actually creating a real physical space and then transporting Sasuke there, and then actually literally creating a copy of his mom and a copy of his dad who are real living sentient people, and then slaughtering them, and then doing that, and also potentially over here like creating real literal physical copies of himself that are real people with real memories and everything, just so that they can stab Kakashi, and then I guess they all die, or they all just like live in this perpetual dream world doing nothing, just kind of like hanging out there together. Um, or is it more likely that it is a dream world and a genjutsu and an illusion that's being like hypnotically projected into the other person's mind? I think it's extremely clear that this is a dream. It's not entirely real. And I don't think there's any evidence so far to suggest that it's a real physical space. But we can go on and move from here. I need to move this over here for next week. Okay, so let me check chat real quick. Dr. Mako says good citation. Oh, thank you. Yeah, I want to try to make sure, to whatever extent possible, that I give people like access to the ability to view this themselves in context. Like sometimes we'll just read through entire chapters together. Tonight I'm going to be jumping around a bit more, but I want y'all to know where I'm getting this shit, especially since a lot of it is like coming from disparate places within the manga, and I want to make sure it's like easy enough to find. Same thing with we're going to be talking about some filler episodes, and like I tried to go through the process of getting time codes so that I could play stuff back, but every single time I've played even a fucking like femtosecond or whatever of audio, I've gotten a copyright strike. You might have noticed, if you try to watch back to my last like stream or two, there are a couple of like random jump cuts because my video was blocked in like every country because TV Tokyo filed a copyright claim. My channel is not monetized. I don't run ads. I'm not going to. I clearly am using the shit transformatively, and I only use like maybe 3 or 4 seconds at a time, but I still had to like go in and edit that stuff out. Otherwise, like the video was just 100% blocked, which sucks. So I'm just, it was either that, and it was either like do this or just like fight TV Tokyo, and I don't really want to do that right now. So that being said, going through the other instances of the Tsukuyomi, we don't need to read through all this, but I just want to mention that I think the next time we see the Tsukuyomi used is during the fight between Itachi and Sasuke later on, right? So here we go. This is in chapter 388, 385. So this is a little bit out of order here, but we can kind of, you know what? It might actually be easier just because I've sort of, hang on, let me just make sure I get this right. So 388 would be like more over here, and then is this right? Yeah, I think it was just that one panel that was out of order. Okay, so let's go through this real quick. Sasuke is fighting with Itachi, and they're doing this little genjutsu duel with their eyes. And this is an interesting exchange because something that Itachi says to Sasuke is that like we all kind of live with our own delusions and our own like distorted views of reality. Something that one person thinks is reality might be a lie to somebody else, and vice versa. And so there's a whole theme across this entire battle of questioning whether or not your perceptions of reality are ever accurate. And notice that like it appears that they're having this duel, this exchange, like Sasuke's sword is through Itachi's chair, but it's all in genjutsu, and then like Black Zetsu and White Zetsu are watching this, and it doesn't look to them like they've moved at all because they're just dueling with their eyes, right? So there's this little line from Sasuke where he's like thinking back on the massacre of his parents. And he says, the events of that night, the young me at first could only comprehend and process it as a mirage. I desperately wanted to believe I was trapped in a horrible genjutsu, but there was no mistake. I was trapped in reality. So that's not directly related to our discussion of the mechanics of the Tsukuyomi, but it does, like, we're going to talk quite a bit about, like, the difference between a dream as an ideal or like an illusion or a delusion versus, like, what reality means, like a counterfeit reality. And the way that reality is described in Naruto isn't always referring to a physical reality. It's referring to like the nature of reality. And consistently, the characters who are using genjutsu and the Tsukuyomi in particular are those who are rejecting or struggling with the nature of reality itself and wanting to like move away from it or reconstruct it or discard it by, you know, turning a better dream or a better version of reality into the world that they live in. I guess that makes sense. So anyway, this is all happening with basic Sharingan Genjutsu. Then Itachi activates the Mangekyo, and it seems like he's using the Tsukuyomi. Actually, it's explicitly made clear that he's using the Tsukuyomi. And in doing so, he shows Sasuke these images from his past. So he talks about, goes through the scenes of their own past together. He winds up showing them, like talking about Izuna and about Madara and the exchange of their eyes and all that stuff. And this leads, of course, to the confrontation of him saying that, like, he wants to get his eyes, the whole, like, Sasuke, you are my new light and stuff like that. And then we have this scene between them, and then Sasuke breaks through the Tsukuyomi, right? And Zetsu is very clear that it was the Tsukuyomi that was used, and Sasuke was able to break through it. There's also this line, turning fantasy into reality with hatred and stuff like that, right? So there's a whole ideological battle going on here, or like a battle of the perception of the physical eyes as well as the perception of, like, illusion and delusion psychologically. There's a couple of things going on in this fight here. So that being said, why am I bringing this up? Well, one, just to illustrate another use of the Tsukuyomi, and two, to ask this question again. Does it look like what does it look like it's happening in this scene? Does it look to you, like the general you, more like Itachi creates an entire real universe that scales to the size of our universe, or even scales smaller, and populates it with real, actual living people who are sentient and autonomous and who are actual people, fills it full of actual real objects, and then brings Sasuke in to this place so that they can have their exchange. And by the way, since they meet, I think Itachi shows Izuna and Madara in this scene, in this overall exchange. So Itachi creates a real, living, actual, physical version of the OG Madara in this space. And then, after all of that, Sasuke manages to break out of it. So Sasuke defeats the Genjutsu world, destroys the Genjutsu world that Itachi manages to create. And thus, Itachi performs a universe-level creation feat, and Sasuke has a universe-level destruction feat. Does that make sense? A, like theory A, or does theory B make more sense, that they are dueling with Genjutsu, and he is using Genjutsu to create and shape a space, a realm, a dimension, sure, but one that is based on illusion and trickery and deception and sensory manipulation, not a real physical space. Again, the series itself, the primary canon, the primary source here, I think is telling us that this is about dreams, delusions, and distorted perceptions. That's the narrative thrust of this whole arc. That's the focus, both, there's very strong visual metaphors, and it's very, there's text and subtext that's all centering around perception here and deluded perception. To me, the idea that any of this supports the creation of a universe or a real physical space completely clashes with what is being said thematically. I don't think there's any positive evidence for it, and I think there are some strong narrative evidence against it. So again, thus far, all the major scenes that we've seen with this jutsu, none of them have involved an actual space creation feat. So, and we're going to start talking about Obito, because Obito is, like I mentioned before, the number one, like, main starting point argument for a lot of the universal stuff is Obito and Road to Ninja creating the limited Tsukuyomi, and the idea that that's a parallel world, like a full universe. And also, you might remember from Key's video last week and from Noodle's video, like, earlier in the year, that they both made this argument that the limited Tsukuyomi creates a real physical space, and it's actually not a genjutsu. It is definitely not a genjutsu. It's acknowledged as not being a genjutsu. It isn't a genjutsu. It's actually a transportation technique. Remember, there's that scene at the very end where Kakashi says, like, we think it's a transportation technique or something like that. Do I have it here? Yeah, here we go. Right? From what I heard, I believe it was type of transportation technique. I said that I thought that this was referring to the Kamui as opposed to the limited Tsukuyomi, but we have it here, right? So we can refer to that later. But let's actually look at what these characters are saying and see if there's any precedent for that. Okay. Let me jump back over to chat real quick. Sorry, it says, honestly, if this were Marvel, DC, Image, or Zelda, the dreams could have been real universes, but there's never been any precedent that dreams or illusionary spaces are tangible in Naruto. Yes, absolutely. So, like, again, there's nothing saying that how can I say this? I think there's a conflict between. I'm trying to paraphrase what I said before. I think the real conflict here is between the power scaling definition of universal and how it's applied to, with implications to a universe that it's describing, if that makes sense. So, like, let's say that I had a universe like Naruto, or yeah, let's say that in Naruto, right? They somehow find a genie, and the genie is purely magical. It doesn't follow chakra rules. It's like an alien genie type thing, right? And so the genie can grant any wish. And Naruto says, okay, my wish is for you to create an identical copy of this universe. But, like, everything is literally the same number of stars, planets, all that shit. But my parents are alive in it. And I want you to move me into that universe and leave this one behind. So the genie is literally physically creating an alternate universe. But he does so by basically just, like, willing it into existence. He just wishes it to be in existence, right? Now, does that mean that the genie has universal destructive capacity or capability? Does it mean that he has universal AP, or that he has universal durability, or that he can fight other characters in the Naruto universe that would be described that way? No, not really. Like, unless you can actually demonstrate that that genie is using energy to accomplish that feat, or that he's engaging with that sort of energy manipulation in combat, then saying that he scales that way is kind of weird. And I think there's this desire, for the purposes of debating or whatever, or just like comparing universes, to try really, really hard to say, no, that genie is objectively, factually universal, because this is the definition of this term. This is what this means. He created a universe, therefore he is, right? And then try and be like, the Naruto universe would then scale to universal. Like, if other characters could perceive his movements and interact with him, that they were interacting with a universal being, right? And it's like, I guess there are ways of creating universes within a given fictional world without being universal in a power scaling term. And I'm just like, the more and more time I spend on this topic, the less and less faith I have in just like freely applying those topics being a good way to get like a fair and accurate representation of the series. I'm not saying it's like totally useless or it can't be used, but it needs to be used in the right context, and I feel like that's not what's happening here. Am I saying that, like, you can't have a fictional universe where people create universes and also aren't, like, energetically universal? No, of course not. Like, it sounds like a paradox to us, but it sounds that way because of the way that we're using these fan-created definitions. It might actually make sense depending on how the author wants to portray things, and that's what I'm very wary of. Like, I think fan terms and fan theories and like fan framing can help us better understand an author's work, but when our desire to frame other people's art in a certain way using certain specific terms that are bespoke that we've come up with leads to a distorted perception of that art, then I think we've kind of shot ourselves in the foot. And that's kind of what I'm trying to like argue against. Hopefully that kind of makes sense. Let's see. Magog says the Japanese copyright system is different from... Yeah, it's pretty strict. Luckily, Jehovah's Witnesses are an American religion, so they're subject to the laws of America. That's I'm sure that's been a headache removed, so to speak. Hopefully the JWs haven't been coming after you for copyright claims, but I think you could probably fight them rather readily on fair use grounds and all that. I certainly hope so. Saria says, then again, if you can grab your soul in this series, I mean, hey, who knows, Boruto is still going. Yeah, that's another thing. Well, I mean, like, there's a thing, I saw this great video, so the folks over at the Walkie Talkie podcast had like an interviewer spot with Mello, and Mello, if I understood correctly, believes that the Boruto world or like series is a multiverse. Now, I happen to not agree with that, but I need to actually hear out his arguments, because I haven't heard his specifically. I've heard others, and I didn't like others' arguments that I heard. But he was able to kind of approach the issue in a way that was very, like, you know, like advocating for, like, patience and calm understanding, which I really, really appreciated. And the value of, like, constructive criticism and the constructive disagreement. And with regards to all of that, I think there are definitely parts of the Naruto universe which might seem magical and which might seem like kind of uncanny or unbelievable. But a lot of the time, when I actually take the time to go look into them, it kind of things start to make a little bit more sense. Like, this is really unorganized because it's for next week, but somewhere in here I think I have a scan of, like, yeah, of Dan, like turning into a ghost. And the first time I read through this, I was like, this is in chapter, where is it, 591. And the first time I read through this, I was like, oh, okay, well, now Naruto is just magical, right? Because he's just a little spirit boy and he's zooming around and he's going into the astral plane, and so this is all just like magic bullshit. But if you like read through and you like look at other examples of like planes and like mental spiritual dimensions and stuff, there is actually a precedent for it. This is Obito's like inner conflict scene from 652. This is like when Naruto and Sasuke die and they're talking to Hagoromo in 670. So there is actually a precedent for it, and if you do a little bit of work, you can fit it in pretty naturally to the overall magic system. It's just sort of like the Izanagi, right? Like when I read that the first time, I was also like, oh, this is just pure magic now. But now that I understand it a bit better, it's like it is magic, but it's not magic that goes into like full Harry Potter mode, right? It's still locked into the overall principles. It's just like of the universe, of the magic system. It's just kind of pushing the borders of that a little bit aggressively, I guess you could say. And I think the same thing with grabbing your soul, right, it also applies. So does make sense, hence why I can do the Caleb and Sophia episodes. Oh yeah, that makes sense. I guess reality is relative even in light. Yeah, the new light. There's also a JW term about new policy, so that makes me LOL. JW and Naruto confirmed. Well, I was saving this for later, but as an early Christmas present, I will spoil something for you. It's actually confirmed that Christmas is canon to the Naruto universe. This is an episode of the anime. This is episode 471, I think. And this is Ten's, like, when she goes into her, like, infinite Tsukuyomi dream. And if you notice here, this is Lee. And Lee, at 11 minutes and 6 seconds in, says, on our birthdays, at New Year's, during summer, and Christmas. Now, I know what you're thinking. You're probably thinking, oh, this is a localization thing. They just like changed it to Christmas because they were using the term for winter festival or something that we don't have in the West. It's actually a Japanese thing that we wouldn't understand. So it's like, these donuts are great. Jelly filled are my favorite. Like, it's like that kind of thing. No, Lee literally says kurisumasu. So not only is Christmas canon to the Naruto universe, specifically Christmas written out, I guess, with like katakana, kurisumasu. So Santa Claus and I guess like Western traditions around the winter holidays are canon to the Naruto universe. So there you go. The JWs are probably lurking there somewhere. They're probably hiding out in the Rain Village or something. Who knows? Of course, that was just a little bit tongue-in-cheek. We'll get back to that later. But yeah, I thought you might find that amusing. So let's see. I did write a Darth Magog episode about Naruto. It hasn't been released. Oh, that's cool. Are you... I mean, no pressure, but I would love to learn more about it. Have you thought about maybe releasing it at some point? What was it about, if you want to share? I'd be very curious to know. Sorry, says, the problem is that people power scale first and engage with the narrative second. Yes, this is very true. I think if you're passionate about narrative, you can power scale it more honestly. Yeah, I think the problem is like kind of reverse order of operations, right? It's like... It kind of works like this from what I've seen from this universal argumentation stuff, is that people say, okay, Obito created a universe, right? And therefore he is universal because that's what universe means. Okay, so now that we know that, what else do we know? Well, we know that characters who are relative to Obito have to be universal as well, because otherwise that wouldn't make sense, which means that, like, Jubijin Madara has to be above universal, because otherwise it wouldn't make sense. And then it kind of, like, goes from there. It's the same thing we were talking about with the Haku stuff, right? Like, if you believe that Haku literally moves at the speed of light, and he's doing that all the time when he moves between his mirrors, you believe that, attacks sent out from this literal light speed movement are impossible to evade. You believe that? Okay, well then, or at least the light speed part, then Sasuke and Naruto have to be light speed, which means that Kakashi in part 1 has to be light speed, which means that Itachi has to be light speed, right? And it's like, we start from one thing which we grab onto, and we are like, okay, we're holding on to this. This is true. End of story. Therefore, now we have to conform the rest of the narrative around this, and everything else just gets like the way that we interpret it, the way that we filter everything else in the series, all gets passed through this filter that we set based on this one piece of data, which is totally ass backwards. What we should be doing is we should start from the beginning and go the opposite direction and see where the evidence leads us and build a model based on that evidence. Then if there's like peripheral or supplementary pieces of evidence that we can look at, like data books, novels, anime, whatever, or like movies rather, because some people like their primary experience of the series is going to be through the anime, and that's fine, right? But like either way, it needs to be put into this overall tapestry of evidence, not the other way around. And I will say, that like to kind of jump ahead a little bit, I watched Road to Sakura, which is an anime episode that ties into the movie. And I also watched Tenten's filler episodes where she goes into her Tsukuyomi dream, and it looks like she actually winds up in the same quote-unquote universe as the stuff in Road to Ninja, right? So there is some precedent for the Road to Ninja verse being like a real space to a certain extent. But there's sort of two ways we can approach that. We can say, okay, well, we already know that it's a real universe because we said so, therefore X, Y, or Z. Or we can say, what do we know about the series overall? Okay, we know that. Okay, well then how do we take that knowledge over here and apply that to what we just saw, right? And try to reconcile and merge those two things. So obviously that's the approach that I prefer. Let's see. Another problem with power scaling, says Magog. They don't do the math. Yeah, the math. Yep. And I'm guilty of that too. I haven't taken the time to learn any math or do any actual calcing or anything like that. So I will freely admit that. As you guys know, I'm a scientific scaler as opposed to a religious scaler. Feats over statements and such. Yeah, absolutely. I agree with that approach. Darth Megog says, yeah, JWs don't fuck with most JW creators who do commentary. We apostate lords are too powerful for the Watchtower lawyers. Excellent. Yes, I'm glad that your influence is unabated then. Yeah, exactly. Jesus and Santa exist in Naruto. I'm sure there's more stuff like that. Like, I've told you before, right, that, like, Mothra is apparently canon because Naruto looks at Shino's dick and is like, you got a baby Mothra down there, buddy. But also... funny enough, in an interesting example of recursion, I guess, if that's the right term for it, in Road to Sakura, which is the tie-in to the Road to Ninja movie, this is not edited. They put the poster. You can confirm it for yourself. It's at the 703 mark. They put the poster for Road to Ninja inside the episode that's the tie-in to Road to Ninja. So in the Naruto universe, diegetically, the Road to Ninja movie about those same characters exists in that same universe where itself is taking place. So make of that what you will, right? And of course, it's just supposed to be a joke. It's just an Easter egg. We don't need to take it all that seriously. But the problem that I have is that people are taking this seriously. They're saying, like, this is part of the evidence for characters in the real main series being able to blow up trillions of suns. This is the evidence. This is the legitimate source. This is the legitimate source that we're looking at. This is the legitimate source that we're looking at to prove that Naruto characters can blow up suns by the trillion load. Maybe not. maybe there's a little bit more nuance. There's all I'm saying. Sorry says, I'm speaking for pure bias. Or from pure bias, that's why my Zelda theory / timeline videos are the longest, or why I can yap up with Daenerys and type out full essays. I'm just a narrative nut and I love stories and lore. Yeah, I mean, like, I actually don't think there's anything wrong with putting an emphasis on the story when interpreting stories. I think you are doing the correct thing there. I'm 100% in support of that. And characterization as well. Yes, Darth Megog says, I'll DM you about the Naruto JW episode. Yes, please do. I'd be very, very curious to hear what your take was on that. Well, I think I mentioned before also that, like, the Naruto series, not that I hang out with a lot of hardcore Christian communities, but I have bumped into more hardcore Christians in Naruto servers than I have in real life in a long time, or in any other server or online community. It could just be coincidence. I have no real explanation for it, but I have seen like a lot of people. Like I think Blanco. I'm not to call you out or anything, but I think like Blanco has a who invited me into Billy's server, has like a profile picture that says like God first. Like Mr. Narrative, I think, also had something that says like let's spread the word of God together. And look, I don't believe in God, but this is not me being critical or like trying to call anybody out. This is not like meant to be pejorative in any way. It was just sort of surprising to me, and I remember asking about it in Billy's server at one point. Like, I'm just kind of surprised. What is it about the Naruto series that you guys like connect with or find passionate, or like super passionate about, right? So it's just really interesting that that seemed to be like a strong correlation in that community. So I wonder if it does, if there are themes that that kind of appeal to folks of certain religious inclinations. I would genuinely love it if somebody came out with like a video of, "Hi, I am a Christian, and this is why I, as a Christian or as a Jew or as a Muslim or anything else, like this is why I, as a religious person, find this story valuable." You know, not that like I see Naruto as a Christ figure specifically. Although, hey, if that's the way that you resonate, like if people do actually see Naruto as like a representation of Jesus's values or something like that, that'd be really cool to hear. Like I want to know more about why it's resonating with people, and I think it's just more power. It just like speaks even more strongly to Kishimoto's narrative like prowess, that he can make this character that is so resonant to people across different faiths and worldviews and perspectives, which to me is the whole point, right? Like Naruto as a character, literally in the case of the Great Naruto Bridge, even like from arc 1, his whole character is about bridging, making connections between different people of different like worldviews and perspectives. So I mean, like, I'm glad that people of different worldviews are resonating with it. Anyway, a little bit of a tangent there, but yeah. Characters, what matters most. And then, yeah, Fourth Wall Breaker 1010 confirmed. Outerversal 1010 confirmed. Sorry, it says, John, I also don't do math because it just feels irrelevant for me in a bunch of my favorite series. If somebody wants to calc the force of Ganon busting through reality, cool, but not me. Yeah, I feel like it could be useful. Like, specifically when we were talking about calcing the size of the planet and stuff like that, I do wish that I had actually, like, taken the advice and the help that Acolyte was offering me at the time, and just, learned more about how to do that, because that is a thing where, like, if the goal is to figure out how big the planet is, I think we can get a decent estimate by doing some, angle sizing and stuff like that, but I just didn't invest the time to do it. I probably should at some point. Put my money where my mouth is there. Sorry, says, or trying to calc Superman being immune to existence erasure because someone started to hope, and he is hope. Don't even get me started on Marlin and the Spider-Verse. It's all too fantastical. See, that's the sort of thing where it's like, if you want to mathematically calculate that and that's fun for you, that's great. I think it's an interesting challenge to try to apply a tool like math to something like that seems to me to be pure narrative. Like, can you cross the divide there? That's a really cool idea. I also don't think you need to do that at all, and I almost think that it's like slightly counter purpose. Not that it's bad to do it or flawed or anything like that. It's just like, I don't see that you need to do that sort of thing, you know what I mean, in order to really understand the story. It's just kind of like not the point. But anyway, so let's see. I think my goal, hopefully I've achieved it with this stuff over here, is mainly just to establish that the Tsukuyomi is not, well, we don't have any evidence thus far that the Tsukuyomi is creating like real physical spaces. It's an illusion technique, and that's how it's been demonstrated. Well, let's see what Obito has to say about it, right? So we don't need to read every single word here. This is chapter 467. This is the whatchamacallit. This is the war arc, and this is when Obito is declaring war. And notice that there are some important things to mention here. Obito is proposing creating a dream world and illusory world to basically pacify everybody and achieve a form of peace that way. And of course, like, what's his name? Gaara says, peace that only exists as an illusion is just that, an illusion. Peace is only meaningful when it is actually achieved for real. Mei says, so what does exist inside such a genjutsu world? There's no hope nor dreams, it's just an escape, right? Um, your plan smacks, Onoki says, of more of wanting to make the world yours and yours only than truly uniting the world. Um, Obito is hopeless and he's kind of given up on this reality, which is why he wants everyone. He's basically like a weird form of magical ninja fascist, where he's like, everybody needs to become one with me and basically just like do what I say. I'll be taking control. I'll be the benevolent dictator type thing, right? So, he kind of explains his backstory here and like how he came up with this particular plan, and he talks about the Ten Tails, the aggregate of all the Bijou. So this is just like useful backstory here. But specifically for our purposes, and this is again like chapter 467 if you want to look it up. But then he talks about he wants to revive the Ten Tails, become the Ten Tails Jinchuriki, multiply his ocular powers, and launch a certain jutsu, a super genjutsu where I project my eye off the moon's surface and infinite Tsukuyomi. All humans living on this earth will fall under my genjutsu. By controlling them all, I shall operate, or unify the world, excuse me. I will create a world with no bad blood, no wars. Everything will become one with me, we'll be united together. So he is talking about creating a world, but the world that he's quote-unquote creating is specifically a genjutsu world. And it's an infinite Tsukuyomi. It's a version of the Tsukuyomi that we've already established or investigated before, so to speak. And we have multiple characters saying out loud very clearly that this place is not real. It's fake. It's an illusion. And any kind of, like, anything that's achieved there will actually just be a delusion. It won't be real. So it's meaningless. It's empty. Right? So moving on into the war arc, this is chapter 562. I just kind of included this for two reasons. One is it starts to introduce this concept of the conflict between Obito's notion of a dream and Naruto's notion of a dream. Obito has kind of given up hope on this world because of the negative things that he's seen happen in this world, and he wants to create a new world where none of that stuff will be true. He's like, when he loses Rin, he's basically like, the only real world, the only correct world is one in which Rin didn't die. So this world must be fake, and the dream world is the only like real world. But he's not like literally right about that, right? Like he is actually in physical reality, and he's just kind of like trying to cope with the horrible thing that happened to him and to Rin. But his solution is basically to like invent the Matrix, like to create an alternate reality, quote unquote, where he can have control over events, but it's not real. It's a delusion. It's a genjutsu. So Naruto instead, his whole ideology is, I don't want to abandon this world, I don't want to discard it, and I am going to cling to reality and actuality even if it's painful. So Obito is like, reality is painful, so let's go into a delusion because the delusion will be happier. And Naruto is like, no, that won't work because it's always going to be a delusion. We need to stick with reality even if it sucks and work without ever giving up to make it better. So there's a very, very clear ideological and philosophical divide here between one character who is claiming that they're making a new and better reality, but they are actually making a fake facsimile that is not real, and the other character who is like, no, this is actually reality. And like the good guys are acknowledging that. Let me check chat real quick. Darth Magog says, yeah, calcs do only work on tangible things. Existential things, you kind of have to deal with statements and lore, which is what it is. Yeah, that's very well said. That's kind of what I was trying to get at. Obito, I'm making a new world. Kage, that's fake, my ninja. Powerscalers, it's planetary feats, yeah. Or like multiversal, putting universes in fishes' brains and shit. But of course, like the other thing here is that Madara himself says the world does not need to grow any further. It should just sleep peacefully under the genjutsu of the eternal Tsukuyomi, right? So notice, like, as we go through here, you know, look for examples of Madara or Obito saying, we are going to create a new universe, and that universe is going to be a better one and a real physical one, and we're going to hop into that universe physically and move there and go there, and then try to look for other examples of Madara saying, like, you're going to go to sleep and dream. Also, it just kind of occurred to me that Madara creating real physical alternate universes and transporting people there wouldn't actually solve any of the problems that he's trying to solve, because it would just be all the same people with the same philosophies and worldview, now just in different physical places. Like all of the same, like chakra being a potential dividing force instead of a uniting force, and all of the ideological and political conflicts that happen between different nations it would always still be the same people. So like just moving them someplace else, it doesn't actually change anything. It has to be some sort of coercion and some sort of illusion to it as well, or at least coercion. I'll just say that for now. So moving along, this is just Obito saying that, you know, reinforcing his philosophy. This is in 573. This is in 577. This is just a conversation that I found interesting about like the difference in philosophy. Like Madara is motivated in particular by trying to, like, he's consumed with this idea that like hatred is intrinsically like woven into the fabric of the world, and so there is no way to solve the problem of this world. There's no way to ever get down to like the nitty gritty and actually fix this world, because hatred is just sort of woven into it. And that's why he needs to create a new one, and that's why he's like abandoning this one, right? And why he's taking away people's free will. I put this stuff in here for this is 586. This is in the Itachi versus Kabuto and also Sasuke as their fight. But basically, I don't know that we really need to go over this in great detail, but it's here in case people want to check it out. And I included it because it is an ocular jutsu, and the explanation that Itachi gives, it's a Mangekyo jutsu as well. The explanation that fucking Itachi gives is that it's like an ocular jutsu that works with the physical senses of yourself and your opponents, the physical senses of two people. And what happens here is that he kind of describes, well, let's just read what Itachi says. You grab an action from your opponent, focus your ocular powers to snap a record of any, or snap a record. Why did I say it that way? Snap a record of any senses that both you and your opponent are feeling during that instant, Exhibit A. Then you recreate those exact feelings. So you're using your powers to create an exact copy of Exhibit A. Let's call that A. By overlaying and connecting to A, the Izanami also links a path between any events that occur between these 2 points. You can create an infinite loop, etc. And then, of course, there's this more sort of detailed technical explanation of the loop and breaking and stuff like that. Now, this is not branching timelines. We talked about this before during the Noodles video, but this is loops within the character's head, right? It's senses. It's the sense from one character merging with the senses from another character and then creating like a psychological loop and a trap. All of this that's happening here, this quote-unquote conversation between Itachi and Kabuto, is happening entirely in Kabuto's head, and the loop that he is going through is this time loop, quote unquote, in his own psyche as a result of the manipulation of the Izanami, which is very similar to what happens when somebody gets caught, like Kakashi got caught in that loop of getting stabbed over and over again with the Tsukuyomi, right? And while he is trapped in this loop, and Itachi is, quote unquote, having this conversation with him on the inside of the loop, Itachi is actually really outside of the loop, talking to Kabuto and getting him to tell him the signs to stop the Edo Tensei. I think, yeah, I included this. So, like, Kabuto himself is actually inside the loop and still yelling at Itachi, while also on the outside he is conversing with Itachi and telling him the signs to break the infinite Tsukuyomi, right? So, or not, the Edo Tensei, excuse me. So, this is just to say that, like, there's another precedent for the Mangekyo Jutsu being able to create, like, these spaces that are within the control of the user, and then feeling like real actual spaces and having, like, control of the flow of time and stuff like that. But that being said, it's still a Genjutsu. It's still entirely within the brain of the caster. And I actually think that this commentary here from Sasuke, merging the physical senses of two people, is actually really on point, because I was wondering about, like, how Sakura and Naruto wound up in the same Genjutsu. We talked about that. Well, if it's just a Genjutsu that's working on one person's senses, how is it that they wind up in the same space, right? And I think this kind of helps create a precedent for that. Interestingly, though, what chapter was this? 587. I did want to talk very briefly about Taiyuya's Genjutsu that comes up in these chapters as well. I think it's right around here. Yeah, I might have gotten lucky. So remember that Kabuto has the ability to, like, summon the bodies, or, like, produce the bodies of the sound four. And he casts Chains of Fantasia, which is Taiyuya's Flute Genjutsu. The Flute Genjutsu approaches them, and then they both wind up in this space over here, right? So it's hard to tell for sure, but this looks exactly like the same space that what's his name? Shikamaru was trapped in by Tayuya previously. But I don't think Itachi and Sasuke are in literally the same space. I think that they have both been not transported. Both of their brains have been tricked into thinking that they are in an illusory space. But of course, like we know from before that this is just Tayuya's like melody affecting their brains essentially with her sound-based genjutsu. Here, their actual bodies, of course, are still physically outside, right? They're in the real world. Their bodies haven't been transported there or anything else. And then outside in the real world, right? Their physical bodies, their physical eyes look at each other and they're able to help break themselves out of the genjutsu. I actually didn't know this. Like, I wish I had mentioned this in my Itachi versus Pain video, but I guess Itachi is literally using the Tsukuyomi to break out with Sasuke. And in the color version, we see more clearly that color inversion of the photo negative there. So it does actually kind of look like in Itachi's quote-unquote world, Sasuke breaks Itachi out. And in Sasuke's world, Itachi breaks Sasuke out. So I think that they are in two different quote-unquote spaces, right? And they are just like, this is a representation of the other brother breaking each other out of the space. It's really hard to phrase this, but like this is pure illusion, right? Unless you believe that for the purpose of creating this genjutsu, that Kabuto literally created an actual universe that had at least one planet with a blood red sky and a shitload of skulls, and he physically created all these physical skulls and put them on the ground, and that Tayuya was doing the same thing when she did that against fucking Shikamaru previously, and that this is actually a real physical realm that they actually really physically go to, and Shikamaru actually really physically went to that realm. And simultaneously, paradoxically, these two characters are breaking each other out while still being bound at the same time. I think it makes more sense. It's more parsimonious if they're just illusions, right? So just wanted to put that in there for some more context about like illusion mechanics. Let me check chat real quick. Saria says, Darth Mangok, have you ever done Seiya calcs? I have seen a few for the CGI series. That timeline is so good, by the way. Female Shun was honestly such a highlight for me in that timeline. I loved her. Oh, that's cool. Yeah, you've hyped up that series quite a bit. I'm gonna need to check it out one of these days. Sorry, it says, I will say I was a little unsure at first because I felt like changing Shun into a girl would take away from the fact that he was the more in touch with his femininity than the other boys, but it works. You know, it's funny. I remember, so obviously, like, I'm a big Silent Hill fan, and I was very excited when the first Silent Hill movie came out. But the director Christophe Gans had or I guess it's just Gans, so I'm sorry for the French pronunciation there. But Christophe Gans had like he played through the first game or watched footage of the first game, and he was like, oh, the protagonist of the first game is a father, and a father is like running around this haunted town looking for his child, and he's yelling for his child saying, where are you, I need to find you, and trying to look for his daughter. He's a woman. He's just a woman. Very clearly, he's a woman. Like, this is the sort of thing a woman would do. And so he decided to change the gender of Harry Mason to well, no, he didn't change Harry's gender, because I think Harry actually comes up in the sequel, but he made the protagonist, Rose, of the first movie, female, and had her chasing around for her daughter, instead of having, like, Harry as a male protagonist chasing around, because he's like, well, clearly only like a mother would be that concerned for their child to be willing to run around a haunted, spooky town to look for them. Being concerned and sad and worried about your child, that's the sort of thing only a mother would do, right? Like, a father would be much more stoic in that situation. It's so fucking stupid. I think he was well-meaning. I think he was like doing a Kojima, where he's like, I've heard of women's before, but in retrospect, it's like, wow, the internalized sexism, or whatever the phrase here, like the subconscious sexism here, is like really strong with this one. Anyway, I wonder if the new Silent Hill movie will be any better. We'll see. Darth Magog says, other than the speed calcs, because back then we didn't think about Dragon Ball being faster than light, I've never seen Destructive Force calc for Saint Seiya. I also haven't seen the CGI series yet. Well, we might both have a homework assignment coming up pretty soon. Um, okay, so let's see. This page from 589, I don't really have much to say about it. Honestly, I just included it because, like, this is probably going to come up again when we talk about Universal Naruto. Like, Madara clearly says that his single stroke of his blade has the power to smash all things in this universe. So, and we did see him just take the tops off of a couple of mountains, which clearly means he can destroy thousands of suns, or trillions, excuse me, of suns with his sword. I'm not even going to get into it. Hopefully by this point we all know that that's hyperbole, and we can tell that by context. Hopefully I don't have to prove to you why like fucking Madara can't like slash through a trillion black holes, with one swipe of his sword. Like we're all adults here, right? Like we all know that this isn't the case. I think this is okay. So this isn't actually a Tsukuyomi. This is just a basic Sharingan Genjutsu because he doesn't have his Mangekyo active, right? So I included this to just show another example of like Sasuke being shown memories or whatnot. It is kind of interesting though that now that this isn't a Mangekyo jutsu, it kind of looks like Sasuke is looking through a portal, almost like looking through Itachi's eyes instead of being there physically present within the realm itself. So maybe that is a distinction with the Tsukuyomi, is that it's like it's a much more immersive experience. It really genuinely feels like reality, and it's almost like a space being created as opposed to just like seeing something through somebody else's perspective. Prove to me, says Darth Magog, why Madara isn't just a boastful bastard. I mean, he is. That's my point. But Leia, like that will come up in debates, and it's like I honestly don't know how to get out of that trap because if people really want to press that issue, they will, and they'll try to catch you with that in a debate and be like, so you're making the positive claim that Madara is just being hyperbolic here. Prove to me that he is. And then I will be like, well, it's just reading comprehension. Okay, then give me an entire lecture right now on reading comprehension and explain to me why your version of reading comprehension is better than mine. And like, I guess on some level that's sort of fair if I'm making the positive claim, but also like, I will not insult the other person's intelligence in that situation by trying to say that like they don't know what I'm talking about, right? Like it would be pretty rude for me to say that you're so stupid that you don't understand that this is hyperbole. So maybe I'm wrong, maybe I'm being unfair, but like it's just really hard for me to believe that people read this and actually genuinely believe, like if they actually sit there and think about it, they genuinely actually believe that Madara is slicing through galaxies with his fucking Susanoo. I think that requires a certain level of disconnect from reality that I think it would be insulting to apply that to people. So I'm not going to do that. But maybe I'm wrong. I don't want to be wrong about that one in particular. But anyway. So, Zarthagok says it would not be rude. The jackassery of debate bro culture is exhausting. You're not wrong nor unfair. Well, I appreciate that. It is validating, to be honest. Yeah, I think I'm kind of like going through a little bit of a wake up arc, so to speak, where, like I've said in the past that I had this somewhat naive, somewhat like, oh, you sweet summer child notion that debating was one of the best ways to understand a series, because to debate effectively, you would need to understand the series so thoroughly to be able to make good arguments. But like when your primary goal is to win a debate, not to understand the series, then that interferes with people's understanding of the series. And like, look, I don't like have a grudge against Sage of Thick Calves, or I don't even like think particularly negatively about him or anything. But part of the reason why I distanced myself, or like I stopped kind of trying to push conversations with him, is like some of the language he was using was like, well, I can still clear this point via likelihood. I could still win this point, like win this argument. And I'm like, that's never been the point for me. Like, I get we are having arguments, we're having disagreements, we're hashing things out. Like, I am making cases, I'm making arguments and stuff like that. I'm like doing a form of debate when I make these videos, I guess you could argue. But at the same time, I'm not here for the purpose of arguing and winning arguments with people. I'm here to try to like resolve the discrepancy. And I realize that sounds kind of hypocritical, or like not hypocritical, like kind of contradictory. Like I'm trying to solve an argument but not have an argument. I'm not exactly sure how to explain it, but I I would much rather, I guess this is the best way to put it. I would much rather lose every single argument and fail every single point that I've made and have somebody debunk literally every statement that I've ever made on this channel if it means that at the end of that I would understand the series better, because that's what I care about. I don't care about winning or losing. I don't care about a fucking competition or a scoreboard. Yeah, I'm like a fragile male with a fragile male ego, and I'm sure like if I lose a debate I'll be pissy about it and I'll cry about it, but then I'll get over it and I'll be like, okay, cool, thank you for exposing my ineptitude in this regard, and now I understand the series better, right? Like I that's what I want. So I'm not going to like butt heads with somebody who seemed, at least to me at the time, to be more primarily motivated with like, can I win this argument now? I don't. That's not impressive to me. Like I don't give a shit about winning. You know, it's just it's so fucking weird to me. I just want to figure shit out together, and everything has to be like I don't know. Everything has to be like a fucking competition all the time. It's just so weird. But anyway, I understand that people enjoy that. It's just not for me. I don't really have a competitive side for the most part. So Saria says you're better than me because my response in that situation is media literacy has a restraining order against you. Does it? Man, do I have your permission to use that if I ever debate again? Because I'm gonna get frustrated at a certain point, and I want to have a couple of lines like that in my pocket. Please let me use that. That's so good. Darth Magog says my response is generally, why the fuck is the planet still there then? That's fair. Magog says, I also, John, have the benefit of being an evil apostate, so I have no qualms about outright saying fuck you specifically. That's stupid. You know, that's I think that must be a benefit of being in touch with the dark side, is that you can tap into those those expressions a little bit more freely. So that is cool. I do want to compliment you again, by the way, on like the uniform design and the like gesticulation, the presentation of your videos. It's a lot of fun. It's really cool. And the voice processing too. You really have that like aesthetic nailed very well. Objectively an evil apostate, yes. Embrace the dark side. Makok says, I like Sage as a man, but he is a really religious scaler when it comes to Naruto. Except in crossverse circumstances, then he's a lot more reasonable in my experience. Yeah, that's the thing. Like, I don't like talking about people behind their back, and I don't like, making judgment claims about people or like inferring their intentions or anything like that. So to be fair and to be clear, like when I was in Sage's server, he did some stuff that I thought were demonstrated like a nice, good character. Like I was having a conversation with somebody that wasn't going very well. He stepped in and he helped moderate and calm things down and told us a nice little Bible verse. And it was, I mean, like that's not my favorite. Like the Bible isn't my favorite, but still, I think the Bible verse was like, let he who is without sin cast the first stone, right? So he was basically trying to defuse the situation and be like, hey, we're all equals here, let's try to get along, right? And he takes the time to respond to like extended essay's worth of comments on his YouTube channel. He takes the time to curate and bring together this community, and I respect his desire and his like stated intention to be an educator and to like demonstrate a motivation for educating people about like basically he said on the Walkie Talkie podcast, he said that like he's primarily motivated by like spreading the passion and the love and understanding of the series that he's a fan of, and so he's not going to engage in certain things like petty debates or whatever if he doesn't think he's going to be able to do that. So I appreciate all that genuinely, and I appreciate the way that he like handles resolving conflicts. And like as a person, I'm sure we would get along if we were to hang out. Like I don't think we would have any real reason to be like against each other, so to speak. Then there's the way that he approaches argumentation that I think is sometimes at odds with his stated intention. Like it's weird to me that you would say, I want to educate people and spread the passion and understanding of this stuff, but then be like, well, I'm only going to take a debate with this person if I can do it on a channel that's bigger than mine, for example. Or like, I'm only going to, I'm going to say I'm going to make this statement that lets me clear this argument, as opposed to actually going and researching and testing it to see if it's true. And I'm also going to like gently chastise you for bringing it up in the first place. You know, like there's some actions that I saw that were like not commensurate with the stated intention, in my opinion. And also, I'm just going to be frank here, not to throw shade or anything, but like, if Mortified is still in that server, then I'm kind of like, you know, I have some questions. I'm not saying that I'm like mad per se, but I definitely have some questions about why, if you want to cultivate a community that's based on like peace and love and respect and understanding and mutual like passion sharing and stuff like that, why you would keep somebody like that who is overtly and proudly bigoted and consistently constantly harasses people. Why would you just sit there and listen to that and let that happen and not do it, not do anything about it? If he's gone, that's a different story, but when I left, he was still there. So, you know, I'm not gonna assume anybody's intentions, but that is fucking weird to me. Anyway, moving on. I think basically all that was just to try to say that I agree with you. I think he's probably a good egg. He's probably good people. Something about part of there's a side of the way that he engages with his community that I find disappointing, and I've told him that in the past, and we haven't been able to resolve on that. Maybe we will one day. It would be nice if we could, but in the meantime, I'm just gonna kind of like do my own thing. You know what I mean? Because I'm also not out here like I like venting. I like sharing, like fucking whining about stuff, but I'm genuinely not out here to start fights, and I don't like want to fight with anybody. I don't want to argue with anybody. Like, I don't like that. I don't like the drama. I just like complaining about it. So Darth Magog says, Saria says they see let's see, but see, they can just say because the planet's using infinite Tsukuyomi, so he wouldn't destroy the planet. You fell. See, yeah, exactly. I fell right into the genjutsu trap. My e-peen has been crushed. Darth Magog said Mortify will never leave that server. He doesn't show face very often, but he's still on that staff. Okay, yeah, well then we still have we still got like not even beef, but we got like some kind of tofu imitation beef. At least we got some sort of like I just don't understand that, you know, like if somebody was in my server and they said something homophobic, like I think maybe somebody like dropped the R slur at one point, and I was like, hey, I would prefer if we not do that here, please and thank you, right? And if they consistently did that, then I would ban them, or at least I would like time them out for a while, because I don't want, you know, as much as I am a fan of free speech, I don't want like slurs being used that would make people feel like marginalized, and I don't like that one. I think it's like crass and rude. It's also just like psychologically like irrelevant. It's a term that has no meaning or purpose in the realm of like science, right? So it's just like it's harmful and it's a waste. And then if we upgrade to like like outright explicit homophobia, not just like dropping an F-bomb to be edgy, like here or there, or just like for emphasis or to try and be cool or whatever, or like, hey, I use this and I'm kind of trying to break the habit and oopsie daisy, right? Well, that's fine. But like explicitly saying like, no, gay people disgust me and revolt me and make me puke and stuff like that, what the fuck? Like, no, I cannot sympathize with like keeping that sort of vibe around, especially when you know that you have queer people in your community and you sit there and like listen to that happen in real time in 4K and just don't do anything. Like, I don't understand. Please convince me that I'm being you know, unfair and unreasonable here. I would love to be wrong. I would love to have just misinterpreted the situation, but I don't think so. I don't think it's okay. So whatever. So, oh, hey, Realman, how's it going? Thank you so much for stopping by. I hope you're doing well. Have I covered the super gravity scan? I have not. I'm sorry if I'm making you repeat yourself here at all. I just saw your comment, Dr. Magog, yeah. Sorry for making you repeat yourself. I don't remember what the super gravity scan is, but I will be happy to consider it if you could share it. Darth Magog says, not yet, also good to see you, buddy. Yeah, it's good to see you. Thank you so much for coming by. Did somebody say science? Yes, science is welcome here. Yeah, so Ryomen, if you're referring to like the F like homophobic slur, I would definitely prefer that you not say it. Like, in general, because first of all, it can be pretty offensive to people and pretty discouraging. Like, I'm bisexual myself, and I've been called that in pretty uh, like some dangerous situations, and it's not been fun. So I don't like hearing it. I understand that some people want to reclaim it and they want to try to like use it as like they try to like water it down a little bit to take the edge off of it. And I'm not gonna be the fucking language police over here and tell people they can't do that, especially if they're queer. Like, some queer people really identify with that term. They like using it, and it's not my place to tell them to stop. I will just say that I think it's like, given the history and given what it means and what it implies, it's just something that I find like very harmful and hope will go away. There are ways to use it in a joking way, like with humor, and to, I think it's pretty clear when somebody is like using it as a joke, to try to like break the ice or to try and like be, to try to connect or something. But my personal preference is very much like, let's err on the side of maybe not using terms that have been used to describe people. If you can think of a word that's been used to shout at somebody while they've been beaten to death because of their sexuality, maybe don't use that word. Maybe maybe pick something else, until we evolve a little bit as a culture. That's just my perspective on it. But if you're talking about fuck, you can fucking say fuck as much as you fucking want. Like, fuck is great. Darth Magog says, shit, speaking of Naruto fandom and JW culture crossover, homophobia, yes, what a wonderful fucking Venn diagram overlap in the middle there. Yeah, I understand, sometimes it fits me. I wish that word and other words with that sound to them just meant something like puppy or apple or something, because they are fun to say phonetically, but that's just the sacrifice we're going to have to make, unfortunately. Darth Magog says, I do wish we could use the F word like they do in that one South Park episode. I don't remember that, actually. Because even as a motorcycle rider, I really hate it when bikers rev their engines obnoxiously. Oh, yeah. Okay, so that might be a context where it could be, if I think I know what you're saying, where it's like clearly they're sort of playing with the word itself. Like, they use the N-word in that like N-word guy episode, right? They used it all over the place. And I think that somebody from the NAACP actually came forward and was like, yeah, thank you. You did a good job kind of bringing light to this issue. So there are ways to do it right. I'm not saying that like nobody can ever have that word in their mouth, but most of the time when I've heard it, it's like I don't want to like spend all night talking about Sage's server, but like I remember talking to some people in there about it, and the conversation basically went like this. They used the word as like a general insult. Like one motherfucker in there literally said something about Madara died an F-bomb, right? Like, and was calling Madara an F word. And I said, hey, maybe could we choose like literally any other word? And then the conversation immediately became about like, what, bro? It's free speech, bro. Are you infringing on my free speech? Like, you're being a little pussy, a little bitch. Why don't you go get a real problem? Like, there are real problems to worry about. There are people who are actually offended. Or are you acting all offended by this thing? While other people are like starving in Africa or whatever. Like, literally, like. Going to those places, being like, there are people dealing with worse things, so why are you fucking talking about this at all? Just let me do whatever I want, and if other people get offended by it, what's their problem for getting hurt, right? It's like, I'm sorry you got your feelings hurt, was the response. And I'm like, okay, yeah, nope, this isn't for me, I don't belong here, right? So that's basically it. Ryoman says, I use it as an insult without much intent or thought behind it. Well, I would encourage you to do some research on where the word comes from, because I had a previous relationship, and when I was younger, and at that time I used that word a lot. Like, I used it just as a generic sort of insult, and then I used it once around my girlfriend, and she got really upset, and I asked why, and because I was like, I'm clearly not homophobic, right? Like, I think I've kissed. I don't know how graphic I want to get here, but like, let's just say I can produce very tangible evidence of me not being homophobic. But that being said, like, I was using a homophobic slur, and my partner at the time explained to me, like, hey, this is where this term comes from. Do you know what it means? Do you know why this term is being used? Do you know how it's been used? Do you know where it came from? And over the course of like 10 minutes, I was like, oh shit, no. I just thought it was like, saying like sometimes I will joke with I have a gay friend, or I'll have my partner, I'll jokingly be like, oh my god, we talked about narrative on the stream today. It was so gay, like, and I'm very clearly like poking fun, not at the stream itself, but at like, I'm poking fun at people who think it is gay to talk about narrative stuff, right? So like, there's that particular context for it. But at the same time, it's like, if I said that all the time, then you might wonder like, well, why am I making all these like weird peripheral gay jokes or whatever? So that's kind of how I feel about it. Like, if nobody's getting hurt by it, that's great, but like, please consider just like not using it at all, because it does have a really terrible history. And I'm not going to tell you what to do, but I think there's an opportunity there for maybe you to learn a little bit more about the history there. And I went through that, and I think my life got better as I like stopped using that word. So just as a suggestion. Saria said, during Pride Month, this gay guy saw me at the store and was just like, I don't know you, but I can tell you're... do you want me to say that word out loud? I'll just say D word for now. And his boyfriend was like, whoa, I'm so sorry, but it was so funny. Oh my god. Oh, so it was like, yeah, so it was meant as a bit of camaraderie from a fellow like member of the community, right? So that feels a little bit different. Same deal as the N-word episode. Yeah, okay, gotcha. Darth Magog. I'll take it as a compliment if my gay friends say, "Oh, you F word." Yeah. Like, if my that's okay, right? Like, I'm not telling you that you can't do that. I personally, like, my best friend is gay. If he started calling me that, I'd have a problem with it, because I don't. It makes me uncomfortable. And I could talk about that more if you want, but also I'm not gonna tell him to stop using it in general, because it's up to him as a gay man, like, to decide what his relationship is with that word, right? It's not my place to tell him what his relationship with it is. It's just that based on my experiences, like, it's never going to be fun for me to hear that. I've heard it enough in contexts that are not fun for it to like never be fun for me. And I tend to want to err on the side of caution there, because I know that that is a reality for a lot of people. Anyway, Darth Magog says, admittedly, I stick around for the likes of Code and Hobby. Hobby's great. Hobbs was an Acolyte, and there's a bunch of people on there that are super great. I mean, I fucking met Saria on there, right? There's a lot of good people there. So, and Sage as well. Like, I really don't fundamentally have a problem with him as a person. It's just like, there's weird behavior or weird occurrences that I think are at odds with some of the nicer parts of his personality, and I find that disappointing. That's all, but no slander. Ryoman says, I know what it means, but I won't stop using it because it sounds funny unless someone asks me not to use them around them. Again, I don't call people that because they're gay or bi. I call random people that with no context or such sort. Yep, that makes sense. Well, I think I've said my piece about this. I've shared my opinion. I think you've shared your opinion too. If you want to talk about it more, feel free to, we can talk about it on Discord. I think I want to kind of move back to talking about the Tsukuyomi stuff, but I appreciate the discussion. I hope that anybody listening to this kind of recognizes that it's all just sort of in the interest of cultivating like a community that feels inclusive, as opposed to like calling anybody out or policing anybody's language. But of course, if you're listening to this either right now or later, and you feel like you want to challenge me or just like hear more about this topic, feel free to reach out to me. I'm more than happy to talk about it. In the meantime, I'm going to get back to the scaling stuff, but I did miss the thing from Saria. John the Maven was the real Naru Jesus all along. Well, now that I have Sun Tzu's endorsement, I feel like I can proceed feeling a little bit more legitimized. Anyway, so going back to this motherfucker over here, purple anti-Jesus over here. So Obito says, my end goal is a super genjutsu, the infinite Tsukuyomi. Okay, so he is referring to it as a genjutsu, and I did want to call that out because both Ki and Noodles make this point of saying that like Naruto and Sakura acknowledge that the Tsukuyomi or limited Tsukuyomi is not a genjutsu. Like, they made that point being like, this isn't a genjutsu. Well, the infinite Tsukuyomi definitely is, and it's something that's mentioned time and time again. So that's the other thing. Like, even if we could objectively let's see. Even if we could objectively prove that the infinite Tsukuyomi is, that the limited Tsukuyomi is objectively creating real physical realities, it still wouldn't prove that the infinite Tsukuyomi is doing so because, or let me rephrase that. Even if we proved that the limited Tsukuyomi was not a genjutsu, that wouldn't necessarily have anything to do with the infinite Tsukuyomi And if we look at the actual things that people are saying diegetically in the series, in the main source about the infinite Tsukuyomi, then yeah, they're very, 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 very clear that it is a genjutsu. Okay, super genjutsu. I'll put the entire human population of this planet under a single genjutsu, a single world that belongs to nobody, one perfect world without war or ill feelings. It is only within a single collective consciousness where the individual has been cast aside that the truth can be found. Now, I find this kind of interesting, and I still want to work on this theory, so to speak, over time. But basically, what I'm trying to understand here is that each individual character who gets, or like person that gets put under the genjutsu, seems to have their own little private reality or private dream, but also there's this talk of like becoming one, or like merging together, and sort of forming together under the shared consciousness or whatever that Obito has. So I think there's a potential contradiction there, but I want to keep an open mind about that as we go. Let's continue to see what Obito has to say. So he says, the world no longer needs hope or future or famous heroes, even if incomplete. The infinite Tsukuyomi can be achieved. Reality will come to an end, and all that will exist will be a single unending dream that shall last for all eternity, right? So basically, everybody in the real world, like their physical bodies, the real world itself, will be abandoned, and they will experience this sort of like endless, timeless, blissful dream within the dream world of the infinite Tsukuyomi. But it's explicitly a dream, right? Then Naruto counters by essentially saying that his dream is to remain in the physical reality, even though it's not as beautiful or as idyllic or whatever you want to call it. And then Killer B also says this. So like, I'm sure he knows that he can access this sort of thing in the illusory space as well, but he wants the real ones, right? So even Killer B, with his very specific focus, still wants the real version, and is acknowledging that the stuff in the Tsukuyomi itself is not going to be real. So now Obito says, more about his philosophy about reality keeps on cruelly forging ahead. Just more about his motivation for wanting to create an alternate reality, but it is, again, like, he's not talking about creating a real physical universe. He's talking about moving away from the physical into the dream, to the illusory, because even an illusion is preferable to the delusion of this current world. And again, he says, and this is in chapter 579, he says, like, that is why I shall guide it towards the dream of infinite Tsukuyomi, right? I'm going to create a world where it won't be necessary for a hero to pathetically make excuses in front of a grave. I'll just go through this column over here, or this row over here. This is more about the philosophy of stuff, which is fine, but I'm just trying to look to see. Yeah, so he considers this particular reality to be absurd. He has no interest in the affairs of a world that soon cease to exist. Now, keep in mind, he's not actually destroying the world physically. He's not blowing up the planet, right? But he is taking control of everybody's consciousness, and the world as they know it, the shinobi world as they know it, will cease to exist because the intelligence, the consciousness of everybody there will be moved to a different reality or existence. Die while still tied down to reality. He's like fighting, being willing to kill people who are getting in his way. But also, I think it's important to just skip ahead really quickly. Obito also says this, right? Like, he says, now be still, you've all endured plenty. He also says, like, shinobi are done for, there's no need to keep going. If you don't resist, I won't kill you. So he is not primarily motivated by slaughtering people. He actually doesn't want to just kill people for no reason. He thinks that he's helping people escape into like a better, more like idealized version of reality that he gets to curate and to basically filter out the negativity from. So he's not actually trying to destroy the world per se. He sees himself as a savior, and Madara does too. When Madara has this speech with him later on, he says something like, Madara is anybody who Madara is he who rejects this world. All who hold that thought in their heart and strive towards achieving the infinite Tsukuyomi are Madara. And he says, like, you are me, not Obito. I shall create a new world that will overcome the paradox of humanity. The infinite Tsukuyomi will produce a dream world without any chakra, and I who possess the strongest chakra will lead it. You are me, not Obito. This is hell. come, you are still the savior even now. Starting today, you shall be the savior, right? So, like, Madara, as much of an asshole as he is, and as bloodthirsty as he is, and how willing he is to like murder people en masse to achieve his goals, both Madara and Obito are not actually primarily motivated by the carnage and the bloodshed. They see themselves as saviors. They see themselves as taking people away from hell and moving them into heaven by denying them the free will that leads to conflict, essentially. So it's an important nuance of their character to understand. Let me bounce over to chat real quick, and then I'll get back to this. Yagami says, I know what it means, but I won't stop using it. Oh, yeah, we talked about that before. Manga. Still waiting for... Oh, short review. Yeah, I still want to do that. I want to get back into content creation of that nature. I started working on another short, and I got wrapped up both in a lot of overtime work, and then as well as, like as you can see, these streams take a long time to prepare. And I really love doing them. I love like talking with you guys. But like I watched Road to Ninja again this past couple of weeks. You know, I watched the filler. I got all the screenshots. I like reread 100 chapters of the manga. I skimmed them. I didn't like reread them in depth. But you know, like I put in a lot of work to get this stuff prepared. And I genuinely enjoy it. But like when I'm already working overtime and then like working a lot on this stuff, it's then kind of exhausting, and also just like not good in terms of like spending time with family and tending to the house and stuff like that, which I'm already bad at, to then jump over and then work on another thing. So I need to just like I'll have a week or two off over the holidays, and I need to take some time to just like make a schedule and figure out how to make stuff on a more consistent basis. So I am definitely motivated to do that. I even picked out another manga that I read called Ashura's was it like Ashura's Temptation or Ashura's Verdict, I think is what it's called, that I wanted to do my next episode on. So it's coming. It's just going to take a while. Sorry about that. So Yagami says, I had kind of a girlfriend who was very sensitive about slurs, so I remember intentionally using them very often to make her dislike me long term. Okay. That's a little weird. Maybe we could talk about that off stream. I don't know why you would go out of your way to, like, make somebody upset who is sensitive. That sounds kind of mean, honestly. Darth Magog says, what kind of... You kind of have a girlfriend. There's also stuff out there. Yeah, I'm not really sure how to respond to that. But if you want to talk to me on DM about it, you can, like, send me a message. Saria says, my end goal is super nap time. In preschool, I was never able to fall asleep in nap time, and when I did, it was over, never again, so I shall force the world to sleep, a world of dreams, yes, where you can have as many appy slices and Oreos as you want, and never have to do a single math problem again. The kind of girlfriend you either are, not necessarily. There are cases where it's debatable. Yeah, I understand things can be a little bit complicated. That's understandable. That's why that Facebook status existed, right? It's not like you have some sort of document, yeah, we're together now. Yeah, honestly, like, I don't want to get too personal, but like, yeah, my first attempt at a relationship, neither of us knew how to communicate at all. And so neither of us, I think we both liked each other, but we didn't want to commit to the relationship, but we also didn't want to lose each other. And so we kept like just kind of dancing around the issue. And then when she started dating somebody else, I was like, oh no, how could you do this to me? And she said, but you literally told me that I could see whoever I wanted. And I was like, yeah, but I didn't know it would hurt this much. You know, it's like, we were young and we just had to like learn how to be adults and talk about it. But I get it. Like things can be complicated. Hopefully you're able to like resolve things peacefully. Darth Magog says it might be a generational thing. It could be. Obito is such a goat. Best Naruto character. I don't know about that. Well, best in terms of like a villain motivation, maybe, but like best as a human being, he's pretty awful. Obito has far more interesting motive than Madara. Yeah, I think. Do you really think so? Do you think that? Because I kind of see them as two sides of the same coin. But what do you think about? What about Obito specifically? Like his motivation, do you think is different from Madara? Because to me, at least up until the point where they have their conflict, they kind of like are like ideologically overlapping, right? They both see the current world as like a counterfeit or fundamentally broken, and rather than fixing it, they're giving up on it and moving to a different one. Do you think that Obito has like a different perspective on that compared to Madara? I'd be curious to hear more about that for sure. And Anyway, so this is going to chapter. Oops, that's fine. Going to chapter 603, and this is the backstory with young Obito meeting Madara and getting healed and repaired or whatever. And White Zetsu says this. Well, to put it very simply, Madara is talking about discarding all the bad things in the real world and escaping inside a dream world that's full of good things. Since it's a dream, everything is as you want it. Even those who are dead can be alive again inside a dream. Just think of it all as going to this huge dream world that was created using Genjutsu. Well, it's more like forcibly taking everyone there and for life too. With Genjutsu, now that's so stupid I'm speechless. So now, notice that nothing here explicitly debunks the idea that you could create a real space with a genjutsu, and some of this language does seem to kind of indicate that that's what they're going for, right? Like creating a huge dream world and then forcibly taking everyone there. You could look at that language and say that, like, yeah, so this is obviously consequently a real space and they're getting like really actually transported there, and that would be reasonable. But I would just ask that, like, I would advocate for putting that into the context of everything else that's being said, and again, like responding to the idea that the Tsukuyomi is not a genjutsu, or the Tsukuyomi spaces are not a genjutsu. Even the real, full, actual, full-on, like, Jubidara powered Tsukuyomi is explicitly escaping into a not real world that is abandoning the real world and going into a dream. And it's a genjutsu and it's a dream, right? So maybe there's still an argument that, like, the genjutsu is creating a physical space. I don't think so. But at the very least, it should be very fucking clear. And in case somebody, not that anybody would ever do this, would be like, well, this is just clearly a misprint or something. No, it's reprinted later. Okay, so we have multiple instances of that. Here, Obito's philosophy starts to be cemented. It doesn't matter to me whether or not he's alive or dead in this world. Kakashi will exist in the world we'll create, okay? So teach me how to create this world of dreams, okay? And then we see this. And this is something that I think is really interesting. So this is something that I want us to really put a pin in and really focus on this, really remember this, because it's going to become relevant when we talk about some of these other feats. And I think this is kind of the key to resolving the Tsukuyomi creating real spaces thing and real universes thing, and kind of like tying everything together. So Madara uses a genjutsu on Obito, and we see this little like effect that clearly he's being affected by the genjutsu. Then he looks around and it's like he's in a real space, so to speak, right? It looks like it's fully surrounding him. Madara says, you're inside my genjutsu. It's still a blank canvas, but I can project my will upon it and create whatever I want, even control them. Okay, so now he looks younger. Since anything is possible, since I'm linked to and borrowing the power of the Geto statue like this, see? We'll use this genjutsu to create the ideal world, and then we will cast genjutsu upon everyone else and bring them here. So, not to put too fine a point on it, but I think what's happening here is that they are creating a genjutsu that is still an illusion. It's still an illusory space. It's not literally a physical universe that exists physically in the same way that like a parallel universe in Marvel is, but also because it's harnessing the power of the Geromazo, and because it's like a super powered version of a genjutsu, it also does kind of exist somewhere. And the question of where is the really interesting part. I don't think it exists physically in the same way that a real physical universe does, but if we take into account, and we'll talk about this more later, that like apparently a version of Sakura can get kicked out of the Road to Ninja verse and kicked back into the main verse, and that Tenten can go into the Road to Ninja verse long after it was initially created. Well, I guess maybe just a few days, but still, it should like it's significantly, it still persists to a certain extent, and she can then go into it later, right? That to me suggests that somehow inside the Geromazo, this space does actually kind of exist. And I think it exists in a similar way to, and sorry that this is disorganized, but a similar way to some of these like planes exist. Like when, one second, where are we? Where's the one with the Biju? I thought I had it here. Yeah, like there's this plane that Naruto can go into to talk to the Biju. This is in 572, by the way. and even like Yukito refers to it as this plane. Like we got all the way to this plane this time, right? There's also stuff like when Naruto goes to train and fights Kurama, right? There's like this kind of like weird, almost metaphysical dimension inside himself, in his mind, in his heart, or whatever, where he's fighting Kurama. So I do think that there is and then like the universe that Orochimaru creates when he does the soul transference, he calls it a universe. Now, interesting about that is that I listened to the anime, and what he actually refers to, he actually calls it like a Jikukan or something like that. Let me see. I think I have it written down. One second. Got my notes on my phone. Anime Kaguya stuff. That's the one. Betsu Jikukan. Yeah, I think he refers to it as Jikukan. I'll have to go find the exact timestamp in the anime. Oh no, I'm sorry. So yeah, it's in if you want to look at the anime episode where Orochimaru is doing the transfer, he refers to it as Ikukan, and at 17 minutes 45 seconds in, he calls it like, this is a place I created. For whatever reason, in the Viz translation of the manga, he calls it a universe, but in the anime, both in the Japanese and in the English, he refers to it as a space or a place, and specifically the Japanese word that he uses is ikukan, which I think means like parallel world or other space or something like that. But it's not like uchu, it's not universe specifically. So it's kind of weird that Viz decided to go with universe, but there you have it. The point being that it is an actual space that he can go into and leave, and apparently the other characters that have been absorbed by him are still kind of lingering in that space. Now, you can say that it's sort of like a metaphysical representation of, or like a non-literal representation of his consciousness or something like that. Like, is Kurama really in a space with an actual cage? Is he actually physically restrained by a metal cage or by the deity gates or whatever, that like the Tori gates that Naruto slams on him, or is that an abstraction? I don't know. We could debate that. But the point that I'm trying to illustrate is more that, like, it's at least feasible, it's at least consistent with the construction of the world for there to be planes of existence that exist that aren't necessarily literally full physical universes in and of themselves. And here's another one, like this spiritual plane where Hagoromo is, or where Obito is, or when Obito is like, when like Kakashi talks to his dad, like that's another example, or when Obito is like talking to Rin before he goes to the other world, to the Pure Land. There is a precedent for that. So just keep that in mind, and we're gonna come back to that when we start talking about Road to Ninja again. I know. Checking chat real quick. Obito has a far more interesting motive. We talked about that. Oh yeah. You think Obito was focused more on idealism and nostalgic factors of the innocence of childhood being attached to the past? Yeah, that's an interesting take. I kind of like that, actually. Magog says, Obito's a better villain than Madara, I reckon, but Madara is just Pain and Itachi and Obito all rolled into one with extra spectacle. Yeah, it did kind of feel to me like Pain kind of set the template, like Nagato's conflict kind of set the template for... we are now examining the cycles of hatred and the origins of this back and forth conflict between people like hating each other, and that leading to more conflict, and that breeding more conflict, etc., and like the cycles of revenge. And then Obito also explored that, and then Madara also explored that, and it just felt like they were digging deeper and deeper and deeper into this one particular idea, as opposed to like Orochimaru's motivations as a villain versus like Zabuza's motivations as a villain versus like I don't even know if you would call Gaara a villain. He was more just sort of being manipulated, but like those characters individually have or Itachi, if you see him as a villain, like those characters have a much more like individualized, distinct, I think is the word I'm looking for, like a much more distinct personal perspective that they're kind of exploring. Versus there's much more overlap. There's much more of a gradient that kind of connects the Uchiha boys and Nagato with their take on everything. Even Sasuke at the end, he has this big moment where he's like, what I'm touting is revolution. And they're like, okay, so what exactly does that mean? He's like, I'm going to concentrate all the hatred onto me, and and everybody's going to hate me instead of hating themselves, and it's all going to just like, everybody's going to focus and become one. And it's like, okay, you're doing the same thing that Pain was going to do with, getting the Biju together and blowing up a nation and ruling by fear. and you're doing the same thing that Madara was going to do by like essentially trying to address hatred, but you're doing it without actually solving any of the problems. You just saw a whole fucking war get started over it, and you're basically doing the same shit. So I don't know. It was a little disappointing for Sasuke's arc, but it's just my take on it. Obito's a vet. Oh yeah. Compared to Madara, I find Madara derivative. Yeah, I think that's a fair take. That's a fair take. I do actually, for that reason, I kind of like Kaguya more these days than I initially did when I first read through the series, because I think, you know, Naruto's goal, at least in part, is to get to the origins of like what the fundamental like problems are that are plaguing the shinobi world, and eventually I think confronting like Hagoromo distributing chakra like Madara was talking about, but it is going to be an important part of that journey. But then getting to the root of where chakra came from in the first place, and this is a very like liberal interpretation, right? But like if you view Kaguya as sort of like a removed inhuman thing that's almost like eldritch in nature, almost a little bit inaccessible or not understandable in conventional human ways. And by the way, I think there's a precedent for that, because Naruto says something along the lines of like, when I fought her, it was like she had no heart at all. She was completely different from anybody I'd ever faced, something like that, right? That like she's a representation of more of a force of nature than just like a character with an ideology that is clashing with Naruto's. And I feel like, okay, Naruto has like clashed with all of these different people and with their philosophies and their perspectives, but now he's clashing with like a force that's in the bones of the world, so to speak. And that is really, really cool. Like seeing Kaguya as a manifestation of the inherent potential evil of chakra itself. Even though she's not a very well fleshed out character, she's kind of a dummy. I still like her. I like her a lot, but like she's kind of presented as being a bit of a doofus. Like Black Zetsu has to do a lot of helping out with that fight. But anyway, hopefully that that makes some sense. More interesting theme, and he has far more complex psychology. Yeah, that's probably fair. I think he's a little bit more nuanced, which is maybe why he gets a better redemption arc as well. Saria says, Obito, mask falls off, Kakashi shocked. It's my best friend. Yeah, the Hirutor. Dynamic entry, just like with Jiraiya. Honestly, like, there's a video I've been meaning to watch that is like, Obito's identity, a fan theory from 15 years ago or something like that. And I want to go see, like, how well that theory winds up holding up. Ryoman says, Obito being mad at Guy for not remembering people. Yeah, it was really good. The whole, like, dynamic between Obito and Kisame, or Kisame and Guy, and then, like, Guy eventually actually remembering him at the end was kind of, like, sweet. Megok says, actually, I'm curious as to how the Biju are stored. Yeah, I don't know the exact mechanics of it, but, basically, when the Jinchuriki are captured, their chakra is very slowly and carefully extracted from their body, like the Biju chakra, and it goes like into the Geto Mazo's mouth, and basically just kind of like gets merged and becomes the chakra of the Biju, if that makes sense, or of the Jubi, the Ten Tails. I don't know if that answered your question. Oh, hey, Hubs, how's it going? Thank you so much for stopping by. I hope you're having a good weekend. Hobby Horse says, Minato didn't have the common decency to give Kurama a couch lamp or mini fridge in his cage. Hashtag worst Hokage. Hashtag the yellow hack of the leaf. Minato mid, says Roman. Yeah, I mean, like, you may have heard me mention this if you've been on the streams previously, but, like, one of the sort of recurring nightmares that I have, and, like, are, like, something that I'm, like, perplexed by, when Kurama decided to go back inside Naruto, we have statements from, like, was it like Orochimaru was able to watch everything that was happening from within his little seal, and I think it's pretty clear that Kurama can kind of pay attention to what's happening in the outside world, and so, like, how much does he see? Like, exactly what things in Naruto's life, personal things, is he present for, and is he aware of that when he goes into back into that spiritual plane? Does he really like hanging out in that just void filled with with water and nothingness and maybe a cage, and just, you know, like existing and watching all of the things that that Naruto gets up to? But I think that's just something we're not supposed to think too closely about. Anyway, Um, Ryoman says, Sasuke, I think, is just trying to find excuses and temporary goals so he can continue trying to satisfy his desires when he was motivated by bloodlust because his goal of killing Itachi was wasted. Yeah, I mean, like, he had his whole life focus kind of like, um, what's the term for it? Yeah, just like focused to a laser amount of precision on this one thing. And I don't know, maybe this is me projecting or whatever, but when I go through a crunch period at work and I'm working really hard for a long period of time on one thing, I get stressed and I get like anxious and stuff as it's kind of taking over my life for a while. But then when it's over and I have like a vacation or I have a break or a 3-day weekend or something, you think I would celebrate because I get my fucking life back, but usually I get depressed because all of a sudden this thing that has been giving me like focus and drive and structure or whatever is just gone, and that kind of fucks with my head. And like I don't do well on vacations. It's like I'm not very good at just calming the fuck down and existing. You know, like I need something to do. And so I can only imagine if your entire life's goal has been in pursuit of this one very single-minded, objective of achieving revenge, and then you have all of this stuff thrown your way, like everything that you believe turns out to be a lie. You know, how do you channel that energy? You know, how do you recover from that? How do you make a new life for yourself? And to a certain extent, like as much as I can harp on about the lack of compelling romance between Sasuke and Sakura, Sasuke settling down and being a well-adjusted romantic partner would make even less fucking sense, right? Like, there's no way with the trauma and the things that he's gone through in his life that he just settles down and just exists, right? So, in a sense, it actually is a good characterization that his relationship with Sakura is like kind of messed up. But anyway, let's see. Feeling that he kept remained even though he found out the truth about Itachi. Yes, he needs to satisfy that in other means. Yeah. I think that's really on point, actually. Darth Magog says, still somehow less of a dick than yours. Yeah, I mean, yeah. I think that you're the leader of the village, and you know that, like, I feel like I heard somebody say, maybe it was me just like joking around, I can't remember, but that like Hiruzen specifically neglected Naruto so that like hatred and resentment would grow in him, and that would make Kurama stronger, and he was actually really just trying to help Naruto level up. Which is why he was so neglectful and apathetic towards his existence. But yeah, imagine like what was he, like 10 or 12, like coming into his house and finding like the carton of spoiled milk or whatever, and being like, oh wait, I guess this kid has been neglected for most of his life. Although it does lead me to wonder, like when Naruto was a baby, like somebody must have looked after him as a tiny infant, right? Like there's a certain age at which you just can't take care of yourself. Like there's a difference between being like, you're going to the academy, and you can basically like fend for yourself to a certain extent versus being an infant, right? So I wonder, I know there's that terrifying panel of like baby Naruto and baby Sasuke, like a chapter intro page with like massive heads like hanging out together, but I don't know if we should consider that to be canon. So see, Ryoman says, well, considering Kurama is still in somewhat good mental condition in Boruto, I think we can assume he can distract himself from what's happening in Naruto's life in some ways and doesn't literally see everything. Yeah, I'd like to think he can just kind of, do that thing like the paintings in Harry Potter where like people can like leave the paintings and go hang out with other characters and other paintings. Like maybe he can go hang out with the other Biju, because we know they can talk to each other through that spiritual plane or whatever. So maybe that's possible. Darth Magog says, yeah, that's baffling too. Who was Naruto's nanny? Yeah, I don't even, I'm not even going to go there. But it's a real practical concern, like who raised that baby? I guess it's just part of the world building that we didn't get for whatever reason. So I'm going to try to go through this quickly because I do want to talk about some of the other Tsukuyomi related things, but let's just take a look here. So this is in chapter 608. This is more about Obito's philosophy and like abandoning the current world, remaking this world. This world is over, okay? Start the infinite Tsukuyomi right away. Madara refers to it as a massive genjutsu. And I think that's basically all I wanted to say there. Just more kind of reinforcing this. Nothing will go as planned in this world. There's no shinobi jutsu mightier than the infinite Tsukuyomi. That might actually be true, except for the fact that the Tsusano manages to counter it. So, I mean, again, like, take people's words in the series with a grain of salt. And also, yeah, I really like this. Like, Obito is saying there's a jutsu that we are using that is going to force you all to become one in a certain manner of speaking, and therefore it is the strongest thing. And Naruto, or like, and it's the strongest thing in the world. And Naruto, responds to that by saying, we're actually all choosing to collaborate together while still retaining our individuality, and that is actually what is stronger, right? So in these two panels, like, Kishimoto is actually really good at creating juxtaposition and creating, like, framing ideological differences and having those being represented by the jutsu and by the, like, physical conflict, and also reinforcing that in his panel work. So I really, really like this exchange. I like the sort of explanations of their perspectives then getting kind of represented by their combat styles and everything. So yeah. And then, of course, this is further emphasized. This kind of feels like it's building up to this panel here, this very stark contrast between these two people, right? I just really like that. No such thing as hope in this world. Of course, this is Neji's death. And Obito continues kind of expounding on his philosophy there. The only thing that awaits you is your worst personal nightmare. So he's trying to equate the real world as a nightmare and the dream world as being, like, the actual ideal. Why keep living in reality? Come join us, Naruto. And he doesn't actually want to kill Naruto as much as he wants to save them from the world. He's just going to kill him if, I do think, maybe other people would disagree with this, but I do think that if Naruto, like, gave up now, that Obito wouldn't kill him out of spite. He would put him in the dream world, right? He would, like, give him his own Tsukuyomi dream. He wouldn't just, like, murder him, right? Here's just, like, some more context for their philosophy. The cage metaphor, the visual metaphor from the Ten Tails here is really powerful, I think. And we're almost done going over this stuff. I think I'll skip over this stuff, but if people are interested, this is in 622. This is kind of just like a good way of illustrating how characters use the term dream in different ways. Like, obviously, Madara and Hashirama have different ideas of what their aspirations and their hopes are for the future. And I think basically Madara becomes cynical about their ability to achieve their quote-unquote dream, like their ideology, their philosophy, because he thinks that the endless cycle of hatred and animosity will prevent that, and suspicion and mistrust will prevent that from ever being a, ever being like a true society based on peace. And they can never really truly understand each other. They can never truly show each other their guts, as Madara would say. And so the only solution is to create another world, and that's why he says, he's talking about his true dream. It is to create the Tsukuyomi, but really, it's not specifically that jutsu that is his true dream. It's just creating through some means another world that, like, circumvents the fundamental unsolvable problem, at least to his perspective, in this current world. So just sharing that to give you some perspective on Madara's philosophy. And then there's this thing from Sasuke where he also says, like, an infinite Tsukuyomi, this is in 627, where village, shinobi, nation, and citizen are all irrelevant. He intends to put everyone under genjutsu and manipulate them as he sees fit. And so that would nullify everything that my brother, Madara's little brother, and all of you have striven to protect. He's not going to let them become nothing, right? So Sasuke here, I think Kishimoto through Sasuke is telling us that, like, the dream world itself, it's not like, it doesn't really make sense. And somebody brought this up last stream, so I'm thankful to whoever kind of mentioned that. But, like, it doesn't, or maybe it might have even been somebody in the Discord. I'll have to go look at that to make sure I'm, like, giving proper credit. But basically, somebody kind of brought up the idea that it just, like, ideologically, philosophically doesn't make any sense for Sasuke to be saying something like this if the world that Madara is creating is an actual real physical space. Because if it's just a matter of, like, making a physical location that they then go to and are then, like, things are a little bit better over there, or, like, they can physically, like, it doesn't make any sense, right? Like, they're physically moving away from their philosophical problems. It just, those two things don't really seem to line up. It much more seems like based on what Sasuke is saying, based on everything that Madara has said and all that, that the dream world is this fake counterfeit illusion, and it's actually overriding their free will and overriding everything that they've struggled and strove for in the real world, right? Like that's the distinction that's being drawn here between the real and the fake. So I don't think that it makes any sense for it to be a physical space. Let me check chat real quick. Yeah, Nanny Nanny McPhee, Nanny Naruto McPhee. Ryoman says, you said Sakura novel confirms Sasuke's a bit of a weirdo once, right? Can you elaborate on that? Oh, I'm sorry, I don't actually remember that. I haven't read through the Sakura novel. I in Kakashi Retsuden, or no, in the manga slash anime adaptation slash novel, I think it's Sasuke Retsuden, where Sasuke goes to why am I blanking on the name of the kingdom? Is it Nagare? No, that's not it. That's the village. The land of Redaku. Redaku. When they go up there, there's a scene where Sasuke like he's not aware of the ritual of like giving a woman like a wedding ring, like an engagement ring, and he finds out about that, and he uses like an earth style jutsu to give one to Sakura, and they actually like are standing romantically in front of this lake, and they hold hands, and it's like kind of a tender sweet moment, and I think that's the most romantic we ever see them get. But there might be more stuff in the in other forms of media, but I think just like they really seem to have no chemistry and like not really know how to interact at all in most of the stuff that we see them in, even after having Sarada. But in that particular moment, they were like genuinely sweet, and I was like, if this was their first date, I could see them eventually falling in love. The problem is they already have a child, so it just was weird about it. Anyway, going to 629. I don't think I have all that much. Yeah, he uses an earth jutsu to create a ring. It's like I think it might be implied that he's using ice release as well to create like a crystal or something like that, but I forget. It might just be like straight up earth style. I have to go double check. But let's see. So here they're just talking about like which world is the real world, the counterfeit world. Obito is has tricked himself into believing that the fake genjutsu world will actually become the real world, but it's an illusion, and he's discarding the actual real world in favor of that illusion, right? And of course, he says, "Look at me, there is nothing in my heart," but all of this is actually a genjutsu, right? Like some people, myself, have been confused about like, is Obito just like literally, is he's like so thoroughly suffused with Hashirama cells that he can live without a heart? But no, like he says, like Kakashi slashes through this dream or illusion version of Rin like this, and like slashes through her, and it's like, no, I don't accept this. Do you really think that such things can plug a hole in your heart? I don't know if I have the exact panel here, but at a certain point in their interaction, he literally says like, stop fucking genjutsuing me. No more genjutsu. Genjutsus are banned. And that's kind of the whole point, is that Obito has kind of fooled himself into not being able to tell the difference between reality and illusion anymore, and is like fully bought into this like delusion, right? Like that's a specific word that Kakashi uses here. And then Obito himself says, wish for whatever you want. Anything is possible in this genjutsu world. That hole in your heart can be filled right away. So you actually kind of see on his expression here, there's a bit of a pained, almost like hopeful, like naively hopeful expression here, where he doesn't, he obviously hates Kakashi to a certain extent, or resents him. There's a certain amount of bitterness towards Kakashi, and he will kill him if it comes down to that. But there's also a part of him that just wants Kakashi to give in and just live in peace and surrender to the dream. And then also he says this is really, I think, an important panel, as small as it is. This is in 630, and he says, you know, what's your issue with a genjutsu world? Reality is cruel. This hole is only going to keep widening. So again, like, all of this, like, I probably don't need like literally 50 scans to support this one like minor point. But oh yeah, here. So he says like, Obito, enough of these tricks. You're banned from Discord. You're banned from using illusion techniques. But basically, like, I probably don't need like all of these panels to demonstrate this point. But I did really want to try to look for any examples that I could find of this being like a real world versus an illusory space or a parallel universe or whatever, but it's like constantly referred to as a dream world, dream world, dream world over and over and over again. And this is specifically the like heightened, most powerful version of the infinite of the Tsukuyomi, not even like the limited Tsukuyomi, right? So if even the strongest version, the final version, the actual real OG version, so to speak, of the Tsukuyomi is creating a explicitly mentioned multiple times dream world, then does it make sense that the limited Tsukuyomi is outputting the energy of like trillions of suns? And of course it doesn't, right? Like, I don't need to explain this to you guys, but like I did want to do my due diligence here. I included this. I'm not gonna even gonna get into that. That's a whole other can of beans and or worms. I think I'm gonna just go through this super quick and then I get back to chat. I think that I've kind of said what I want to overall with all this stuff. Just seeing if there's any other mentions of like dreaming or whatever. Oh yeah, here. That's right, you don't have to fear death or keep enduring anymore pain. You'll be entering a dream. If you get put under Genjutsu, you'll be the same as dead. This is 647. And that's basically it. Again, like the definitions of dream as part of those ideological conflicts over there. Where we'll be ending in a few minutes. The moon, the time to head to the moonlit dream world nears. Look above you. Okay. It's finally time for the moon streams to bury the escaping hole of hell. Okay. He does say obliterate this world, but he's talking about like abandoning the physical world, not literally breaking the planet. And I think we talked about this stuff as well. Infinite Tsukuyomi will produce a dream world without any abominable chakra. Savior of the world, shadows, hell, turned hell into heaven. I don't think there's anything else here. This is just more for like reference. In any case, Madara has launched his jutsu. It's a powerful genjutsu. I suspect everyone outside has fallen under its spell. Trapped inside a dream. And this is like 678. So yeah, I think I've done my... Oh yeah, here we go. The eye that can... This is Kaguya talking too. The eye that can reflect off the moon and grant the infinite dream shall open. Okay. 676. Or no, it's not Kaguya talking. Sorry. Kaguya does talk to him at one point, but that's not actually her right there. But yeah, I mean, like... literally says infinite dream shall open. I think there's one more over here. So here's Black Setsu saying, even when Kaguya previously cast the infinite Tsukuyomi on the populace, she preserved those people alive. I thought he said something about dreams, but no. Anyway, the point of all of this is that the fucking Tsukuyomi consistently throughout the entire series is never described as creating a physical, actual universe. The universe that's described, if we even have a term that's like similar to that, like parallel world or parallel dimension or something, it's never really described in terms that indicate that it's a like physical actual copy of the real world. It's actually explicitly repeatedly by multiple characters over and over and over again over the course of 100 chapters basically referred to as a like deceitful or counterfeit or fake, illusory, mockery, bootleg version of reality. It's called a dream about 1,000 times. And really going off of the series itself without going into peripheral, like source, like side material, I genuinely, honestly, this is my honest take, I don't think that there's a single piece of evidence to suggest that the Tsukuyomi are creating real spaces. The only evidence that I think comes from can be applied for that is this one thing with Madara. This is kind of weird. This is a little bit different. Everything else comes from the peripheral material. And you know what? If you want to consider the peripheral material to be canon, that's great. If you want to have it be included in your overall assessment of the series and it helps you understand it better and it enriches your understanding and you have more fun, that's also great. But I just want to point out that if you're building a model for Naruto and how the universe is constructed and trying to get a real, accurate, honest view of the series, should we be starting from this and then letting this inform our opinion on this? Or maybe is that backwards? Maybe should we be starting from this and then letting that help us decide whether or not like this is canon? I'll leave it up to you. But I see if I can pull this up later. But also, if you're curious, go to Crunchyroll or Hulu or whatever and just go through and hover over all the episodes where characters, in the filler episodes where characters are like in dreams. All of these just say like Killer Bee gets caught in the infinite Tsukuyomi and begins dreaming in his dream. Like, even in the filler shit, the actual like written descriptions of what's happening in the episodes, the like on Hulu and on Crunchyroll, they're telling us the same exact thing. They are dreaming. They're literally just dreaming over and over and over again, from all these different sources. Dream, 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 dream. And please don't take my word for it. Like, go look. Go fucking listen to what they're saying. Anyway. Okay, so Hobby Horse says Sasuke can't use ice release, but he simulates it by layering wind on water. That's what he does. Oh, okay, that makes more sense. I felt like I'm probably getting confused because I think Kakashi has a feat in Kakashi Retsuden where he like uses some sort of like, doesn't he use earth release also to like make a crystal inside that mud wall? It's called like the Earth Hero Jutsu or something like that, and then he uses it to negate a lightning style jutsu or something. I forget, but yeah, there's a couple of feats that Kakashi and Sasuke have in the novels or in the peripheral material of manipulating stone into crystal, and I thought that Sasuke specifically had the ability to do like ice release fucking Kekkei Genkai style shit, but I might be misremembering that. So I appreciate the clarification there. Hobbs. Megog says, I mean, isn't that all ice style is? I think, like, I see, like, Hobbs kind of beat me to the punch, or face, what's the expression? Anyway, Hobbs got there first on that explanation, but yeah, I think that, like, maybe even if a character can use, like, all 7 forms of release, of nature release, combining them together into Kekkei Genkai and Kekkei Mora and Tota and whatever else might not be possible unless they have like the genetic predisposition towards doing so, or like I guess I wonder, is so the Rasen Shuriken isn't a Kekkei Genkai, right? It's like not in the same way that like boil release or particle release is, right? Naruto is taking 2 different elements and like, or no, because it's not 2 different. It's shape transformation and nature transformation, but it's not 2 different elements. So even like pressure damage or wind enhanced fire or any like the combo shit that Kakazu does, right? Like Kakazu has access to fire and he has access to wind, and he can use an attack that is a wind enhanced fire attack, but he's not actually activating like a Kekkei Genkai, you know, new form of release. He's just using one to enhance the other, right? Hopefully that makes some sense. And then Hobbs said, not exactly. Elemental Kekkei Genkai are brand new elements created by the fusion of 2 elements, so while you can create ice by cooling water with wind chakra, you can't create ice Kekkei Genkai. Yep, that's great. That's a great explanation. Aren't we all ice? Maybe. We're all just like wet ice. Our bodies are composed of 70% wet ice, didn't you know? Drosmekog says, but what's the functional difference though? Just ease of use, or ease of use. Hobby Horse says the functional difference is that the new elements have unique properties. For example, Kakazu can amp fire with wind, but Scorch Release... Yeah, okay, cool. So we're like, we're some parallel thinking here. But Scorch Release instantly evaporates all moisture in your body. Yeah, that's a great way of explaining it. Thank you for the clarification. Sorry, it says, also, John, my older sister says you sound like Hiccup from How to Train Your Dragon. I will take that as a compliment. I'm going to assume that it is, and I'm going to write a note to look at Hiccup from How to Train Your Dragon. Cool. Thank you, I think. I think I remember enjoying that movie. I liked Toothless a lot. Thought that the animations on that character were very well done. They're doing like a live action remake or something, right? Or at least a more realistic CGI version or something. So I'd be curious to see what people think of that. Okay, so the 2 main things I wanted to cover tonight were the overall overview of the Tsukuyomi itself as a genjutsu, and then I wanted to talk about Naruto X Boruto Ninja Storm connections, because there's a version of the Tsukuyomi that Key mentioned in his video that comes up in there. And I think before I do that, I want to really try to take like no more than 10 or 20 minutes at most. Hopefully it won't even take that long, to just mention some additional things that I've learned about Road to Ninja, so that we can kind of tie this all together. And there is actually a potential debunk to my position in here, so I want to like be honest and just like share this stuff too. Okay, I forget who pointed this out to me. I think it was actually multiple people, but thank you again to whoever mentioned that there is a Road to Ninja tie-in anime episode called Road to Sakura, and then there is also a later tie-in, that like a callback or throwback or whatever, called where is it? It's like To the Dream World, and then Where 1010 Belongs. So those two episodes there. So let's bring this over here and talk about this with 1010, because that's relevant to her story. So the Road to Sakura one is really weird, and I'm not exactly sure what to do with it, but I wanted to at least mention it in passing. So the way that the episode starts is, quote unquote, Sakura appears out of thin air and falls to the ground. And Ino comes over to her and says, "Hey, what's wrong with you? Are you okay?" And Sakura has apparently amnesia, has memory loss. And so they're not quite sure what's going on with her. So Ino decides to take her around town and try to jog her memory. So they go to Naruto's house, but Sakura doesn't recognize it. And Ino's like, it's really weird that he's not there. Where the hell could he be? So Ino gets the idea that like Sakura's starting to get some of her memories back, but she remembers characters as being very different. Like she remembers what's his name? Kiba as being a cat lover, and Shino as being a bug hater and stuff like that, and Shikamaru as being an idiot. And she doesn't quite know why, but she manages, it's kind of like a gag episode, right? She manages to convince all these other characters to like act in the way that they appear in the movie. So they act like they're opposite, like mirror universe selves, so to speak. Okay. And this doesn't really do anything, right? Like they're pretty skeptical about it. Choji looks like this, and Sakura looks like that, and they don't really manage to accomplish anything. But then Sakura meets her parents, and in the Road to Ninja universe, or sorry, I should mention that like the reason why she's having them act like this is because in Road to Ninja, in that verse, in that space, whatever you want to call it, like Obito kind of fucks up, as you guys would probably remember, and like doesn't accurately recreate characters. So in the Road to Ninja verse, Shino hates bugs, and Kiba likes cats and hates, or doesn't get along with dogs, etc. And Shikamaru's an idiot, and Choji's skinny. So basically, this Sakura seems to have the memories of a Sakura that would have grown up in the Road to Ninja universe. It seems like she's from the Road to Ninja universe, right? So then she talks to after meeting her parents and like having her memory jogged, and this is how it's explained to us. And we're going from left to right, left to right, left to right, down each row. So, and here's the time codes too if you want to check it out yourself. So Sakura is in her world in the Road to Ninja verse, I think. It's not entirely clear. She's standing on a tree. The tree like goes ghostly shimmery and disappears, and then so does she. Like she falls down and lands on the ground, and now she's in the main verse. And this is her talking to Ino in the main verse, and she says she wasn't sure what happened, just that a powerful force reeled me in, and when she came to, when she woke up, she found myself in this world. So the main verse, right? Now Sakura says, "I'm probably not the Sakura you know. I'm not from here. This world," and then Ino says, "This world, you say," like, and so they're trying to figure out like the distinction between these two different worlds. And then Ino, or Sakura starts to fade into light, kind of like the tree was fading into light over here, right? And she says, "Thank you for being my friend here as well." So she's drawing a distinction between these two spaces. Ino says she just faded away. Sakura fades away and disappears. Ino says, "Was it a summoning? But I don't see any jutsu formulas." So she thinks maybe Sakura got pulled away, taken away, but no. She wasn't transported away because there's no jutsu formulae. And then she says, "Wait, what happened to the Sakura that I know?" And then we see this big red moon. And this red moon is specifically associated with the limited Tsukuyomi, which we see in the movie itself. These are screenshots from the movie. Okay. So keep all that in mind. I have a theory as to what's going on there, but just for now, what's apparently established is that this Sakura, a real, physical, tangible, actual Sakura, lives in the Road to Ninja universe, the one that was created by Obito with his limited Tsukuyomi, and at some point got kicked out of it and pushed into the main universe, hung out for a little while, and then either went back or dissipated or faded away or something like that. So that would seem to be a debunk to what I said before, right? Because how is Sakura an actual physical person able to exist physically and come back to the real universe if the Road to Ninjaverse is not a real physical place? So let's keep that in mind. Skipping this for now, and then we're going to go to the Tenten filler, which is basically right after the Infinite Tsukuyomi is cast in the anime, episode 426. Jesus, there's a lot of fucking episodes of the anime. Right after that, we get a series of filler episodes where we see the dreams of multiple people in sequence, and I think the first one is Tenten. So again, the episode is 427. In the manga, just for context, right around the time where the Infinite Tsukuyomi is about to be cast, Tenten is hanging out and she finds the scroll that would let her summon the Ember Purification Jar in this gourd. She says, with these ninja tools, we can seal away the enemy in an instant, but I need to ask someone from Kumogakure how to use them. And then you see this, like, talon-looking thing fall into it, and this is one of the, like, horns off of Madara's faceplate or head or whatever you want to call it, right? So this is part of Madara's body, I guess, that falls and pierces through the scroll. And this happens right before the events of the Tenten filler episodes. So, funny enough, the episode is called To the Dream World, okay? And we see, so let me specify that, like, at the beginning of this episode with Tenten, we see all the characters kind of get wrapped up in the bandages or threads or whatever the hell these things are, the tendrils of the Infinite Tsukuyomi. We see the Infinite Tsukuyomi cast, and yeah, you can see it right here, right? This is what happens at the start of the episode. At the 2-minute mark, people are wrapped up in the Infinite Tsukuyomi, and the same thing happens to Tenten. Right before this, she sees that same scroll on the ground, and then she sees this, the same thing we saw, and she's trying to get to the scroll so that she can seal away Madara and try to, like, help out with the war. Then the Infinite Tsukuyomi is cast and she's wrapped up in it, and she goes into a dream. Now, what's funny about that is that in the dream, first of all, she sees a red moon inside the dream world. And then she also sees this, this is the same image that we get of the limited Tsukuyomi, right? Minus the crystal ball, but it's the same, like, tomoe pattern. It's the same, like, coloration and stuff like that. And this is what we see at the beginning of the episode, right? Same kind of red moon that we see over here. So the episode, not a whole lot really happens. She shows up. She starts talking to other characters. She basically realizes that she's trapped in a fake world, and she tries to break out of it. And then eventually she, and I have a feeling that somebody in chat might recognize this particular image, she feels the need to try to break out of the world, but eventually she decides, I actually really like this world, so I'm going to stay here. I'm going to succumb to the dream, and she kind of, like, gives in to Obito's manipulations, so to speak. However, you might notice something kind of intriguing about the way that these characters are depicted. So first of all, Hinata looks like that, and Naruto looks like this. For one, he has, like, the Minato-style hair thingies coming off the side of his head, and also these two characters are fawning over him and also calling him Menma. Now, you probably remember that Menma was the name of, like, the dark version of Naruto in Road to Ninja, and this is Hinata's appearance from Road to Ninja, and this is Sasuke's appearance from Road to Ninja, and here is the red moon from Road to Ninja. Now, Tenten says, wait a sec, this is a fake world created by our enemy. She also says, I'm going to escape from this world. I have to learn every little detail about Genjutsu. They intend to coax and drag me into this world. Okay, I wonder what's happening with everyone in the real world. I'm going home to my own world. And so I listened to this in Japanese, and I kept track of, like, what the words were that are being said. I invite anybody to challenge me on this and go verify it yourself. The words that they use consistently for world or space are sekai or basho, and I know that sekai can mean universe, but it can also just literally mean, like, world or planet or society. So consistently throughout these two episodes, and this one as well, I never heard one use of the term uchu or, like, even ikukan or anything like that. It was always sekai or basho, so take that as you will. To me, it seems pretty consistent that they're referring to it as a genjutsu world and a dream world. So after a while, basically, Tenten, I think in the second episode, like she goes to meet Kurenai, and she's asking about like how you're an expert on genjutsu. How the fuck do I deal with this? Because I need to get out of here. And she says, or Kurenai says, like, well, maybe you can break out if you're like a higher rank of a genjutsu user than the person who casts a genjutsu on you. But obviously, like, that's not really working for Tenten. Um, I did find this kind of interesting in the second episode at 554. We do have this. This could have been useful for the geography scaling. I don't really blame Sage for not like happening to find this panel or whatever. I just thought it was kind of funny that we're getting like a metric of this could possibly be used for geoscaling, because according to this guy, if Tenten uses her shinobi legs, if she like runs at shinobi speeds, it will take her just a few days to get to Amegakure. So depending on how fast you think Tenten can run, that can give you a vague like distance meter yardstick for the distance between Konoha and Amegakure. So it's potentially useful. Anyway, so Tenten is imprisoned for reasons. She's like framed for a crime essentially, and she is starting to feel a little bit invested in this world. But she says like, who cares what happens to this fake village? Lee and Neji come to save her and get her out. And there's this line about Christmas that we talked about before. And then Naruto says, I know you're Tenten, or Menma says, I know you're Tenten, but not the Tenten I know. And you keep talking about going home. I think your home is located somewhere far away from this world. So he's also acknowledging that something is not right about her, which seems to imply, you know, he knows a Tenten, he has a relationship with a Tenten, but that Tenten is not actually in his universe anymore, right? So that's something worth considering. Then I guess like Dollar Store Hanzo, or Hanzo shows up, and it's interesting because he has his main like, oh yeah, Menma says you should return to where you belong. So then this is kind of funny, right? So Hanzo shows up with the salamander. Menma goes into fucking KCM2, possibly Sage Mode KCM2, and maybe just base KCM2 with Kurama, and grapples with the salamander, but doesn't manage to defeat it. He's like grappling evenly with it. So in this universe, the salamander is on par with KCM2 Naruto. Then Hanzo summons another salamander off to the side. I don't know, maybe it's a clone, like a shadow clone of the first one, or maybe it's a second one. I don't know. He doesn't name them as far as I can recall. But then nobody else can do anything about it, and everybody else starts saying like, well, whatever shall we do? If only somebody could help us out of this predicament. It sure is a shame that nobody special is here who could like seal these two salamanders away with two special ninja tools. And then of course Tenten pulls out this scroll, the same scroll that she had at the beginning of the episode that she was trying to reach for, and she seals them, and she says, I was able to protect everyone in the world with my power. And so she decides, hey, maybe this dream world isn't actually all that weird after all. I'll stay here. And then we get this honestly like really fucking chilling and kind of disturbing in a good way panel of her like succumbing to the world, and then this is like her physical body, and her mind is now like given into the dream, and there's the influence of the infinite Tsukuyomi. Now, what's funny is you would think that since we are discussing like people getting transported into alternate dimensions and alternate universes and stuff like that, that there's an easy explanation, right? The Naruto universe itself, or the the Roto Ninja verse, was created, and Tenten, just for whatever reason, happened to be physically transported there to that actual universe. She brought with her this physical scroll into that verse, and because she had this physical scroll that was the actual scroll that actually summoned the literal like tools of the of the Sage of Six Paths, she was able to defeat literal Hanzo, physical Hanzo, in that world. And that means everything that happened there was real, and it was a real physical space. The curveball that we get thrown is that at the end, we go back outside the realm. We are outside back in the real universe, right? The main universe. And we see that the scroll that she supposedly had inside the dream world was actually outside the whole time and was still pinned to the ground from Madara's mask. So she imagined herself having this scroll, or she had like a copy of it, I guess you could say. But whatever this thing is that she has that she's using is not this. The real, actual physical version of this object is still there in the real world, which suggests that she was dreaming this and it was not real. So I'm gonna check chat real quick. I think I have a explanation of how this all ties together, but if you were to stop listening right now, or if you were to be looking for arguments to cherry pick and harvest to demonstrate that the road to Ninjaverse is actually a real physical place, there you go. I have provided you the quotes to quote mine, and you can feel free to run wild with it. But if you stick around for a couple more minutes, I'll explain why I think that there's some problems with this, or really, I'm going to present my attempt to, at a unified theory, so to speak, if I can be a little pretentious for a second. I want to try to find a way to unite all this stuff and provide an explanation that answers as many questions as possible without without creating more questions. How do we take these disparate pieces of information? How do we take the holes in this stuff and like plug it into the stuff over here? And I do have something I'd like to suggest. Of course, I think it can be worked on further, and if people want to suggest ways to improve it, please let me know. Let me check chat real quick before I get into that, though. Let's see. Oh, not too much to go over. That's good. Darth, not that I don't like chatting. I do. But I want to make sure that I put a button on this too, so that we have time to talk briefly about Storm Connections as well. So, Darth Magog says the craziest thing about the Tenten Dream World is that it implies Naruto and Tenten have had a conversation. Yeah. I definitely recall Tenten saying disparaging things about Naruto during his fight with Neji, but have they ever exchanged a line of dialogue over the course of the entire series? I don't even remember seeing her do anything in Road to Ninja. I think, is she here? Oh yeah, she's here. She was present. But the weird thing is that every other character gets like this is the part of their character trait that's flipped or inversed or whatever and gets to be a part of the story. I literally don't remember anything about her presence in that movie apart from, I guess, the anime tie-in movie. There was a screenshot of her in the tub in the bathhouse. That's literally it. So like that kind of speaks for itself, doesn't it? Wait, yeah, sorry. Wait, exactly. Hey, Loha, how's it going? Hope you're doing well. Hope you're having a good weekend. Loha says in the data book they're called Sally and Mandy. Please tell me that you're not trolling. I want that to be true so bad. It's amazing if that's true. I really, really hope it is. Okay, so how do we reconcile all this? So I still maintain the position that the idea of Obito using the power of 7 Biju and the Geromazo to create 9 real extant actual Biju, including Kurama, and also, I guess, like a character who is as strong as Pain, or like definitely like scaled similarly to Pain in terms of like Menma when he destroys the village, and also I guess Hanzo with 2 fucking giant salamanders that are relevant to KCM2 Naruto, and everything else, and trillions of stars and trillions upon trillions of planets and black holes and all that shit. I still think that makes no fucking sense. Power-wise, energetically-wise, and narratively, if he can actually create entire universes, if he can use shit like the Izanagi to reshape the actual universe, it would make much more sense narratively for him to just do that and just like change the actual world that they're currently in instead of making a dream. And the fact that the series tells us about 8 quadrillion times that it's a dream space and illusion and it's not real and that it's fake and that it's counterfeit, blah, 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 right? I think that mountain of fucking evidence over here is overwhelmingly more significant than shit that's happening in filler. But if we want to try to pull everything together, this is what I've got. Let me know what you think. So Madara creates this space, this Genjutsu space, and he says that he can pull people into it, and he says that he can kind of fuck with it however he wants to, and like change it however he wants to, specifically because he's using and linked to and borrowing the power of the Geto statue. And given that he is referring to it as a space and talking about bringing people into it and uniting them. I think that it is possible in the same way that we have like these other planes of existence. We have these spiritual planes, we have these mental planes, these inner dimensions, we have the fucking Orochimaru quote unquote university creates, that it is possible for the Geromazo's power to be harnessed to create an actual space. Now, by actual space, I don't mean literal universe with fucking quadrillions of or quintillions of fucking black holes. I mean a spiritual plane, another dimension, another space of some kind. Then, once that space has been created, it can persist for some time as long as there is some sort of chakra input to it to some extent. Things from that realm can cross over. People can from the outside world can go into that interior space. People from the interior space can go to the exterior space, and that's just fine. But there are some restrictions. If you are from the interior space, if you were created as part of this illusory genjutsu, you might be forced back to your world, or you might fade away and you might lose your physical form because you are basically just a byproduct of this illusory space, and so you don't have the same kind of tangibility and permanence as like a real actual person. I wish I had it here. I thought I did last time. Oh yeah, here we go. So like, same thing, right? When Naruto goes into the Naruto Ninja verse, he gets Minato's cloak, and then he comes back into the main world with it, and he's got it on his back, but then it fades away. So maybe things can be temporarily made tangible, but if they're disconnected from that world, they can't persist. They're not equivalent. They're not one-to-one equivalents with objects that are physically real and created or extant in the real world, the real universe, okay? And that being said, when the Road to Ninjaverse was initially created, it was created with the power of the Geto statue, and something about it lingered on inside the Geto statue. So in the same way that like the realm of the nightmare lingered on, like exists for as long as Obito and Kakashi are in this space, the realm of Road to Ninja exists for as long as the Geto Mazo is alive and has chakra in it, I guess, right? Those 7 Biju and that fucking statue exist, and basically it's almost like they created like a World of Warcraft server, or they created like a version of the Matrix and just left it running. So it is still a dream, it's still an illusion, it's still a fake realm, whatever, but it's a very powerful like spiritual plane that has been created with some form of permanence that will continue to exist as long as the Geto Mazo exists. And so the little like simulated dream people are running around doing their dream shit, and when Tenten shows up for some fucking reason, I still don't know why, I don't know if it's ever explained, for some fucking reason, rather than going into the main Tsukuyomi dream, she gets pushed into the Road to Ninjaverse. Maybe they just wanted to like do a throwback, I'm not sure, but the fact that the red moon appears and that all these characters have the same names and same like inverted appearances and traits mean that like for some reason everybody else went to their own dream world or went to like the consolidated dream world, but like the data for the Road to Ninjaverse was still stored in the Geto Mazo, and she went to that place instead. Again, that doesn't mean that Obito created quadrillions of fucking black holes. It just means that within the Geto statue, that world, that dream space, that illusory space still does exist to a certain extent. Now, of course, the counter to that is, who cares? It's the anime. This shit is happening. Don't, like, why consider this to be canon? Or more to the point, in the Road to Sakura tie-in episode, right after it's done, right? So, like, this is when the narrative wraps up at 17:55, or at, like, 18. At 18 minutes and 19 seconds in, we cut to Ninja World News, starring Mabui and Shikaku, who are on TV and are giving a televised news report of the war, including this happening with Darui being on camera and acting like this, and then cutting to another camera that is inside the sanctuary recording Killer Bee and Naruto training, in which they rapid fire throw Biju bombs back and forth at each other like they're, I don't know, those cannons that launch baseballs at the batting cages or whatever, and they're just like throwing like Biju bombs back and forth really quickly at each other, or at least like black balls that look like Biju bombs. They're just juggling them back and forth. We also have an explicit mention of Bee and Naruto being isolated inside the Turtle Island in the same episode, seconds later, that is supposed to be occurring concurrently with Road to Ninja. So while Sakura is getting kicked out of her Road to Ninja verse and the real Sakura is trapped inside the Genjutsu world, they are also simultaneously in the middle of a war, and Naruto and Killer Bee are fucking around with each other like this, and Darui is doing this. So how much of this you want to be to consider canon, how many excuses you want to make for this and say, oh, it's just like a, it's a gag, or like it's a throwback episode, a flashback, or whatever. That's up to you. Whoever's watching this or whoever's like doing the scaling off of this, you can decide whether or not you want to consider this to be canon. That's subjective. That's up to you. I tried to be fair and to provide a way for us to all get along and for us to all kind of merge our ideas together, like Madara wanted, and say that, like, here is how we can have our cake and eat it too. Here's how we can consider, like, work in the stuff from Road to Ninja and the spin-offs and put it all within the framework of the main series without saying stupid shit like Obito is, like, farting out entire, like, clusters of quadrillions of black holes casually, right? Like, we can still incorporate this stuff and have fun with it without going off the deep end with that kind of scaling, right? I think I've been fair. I've tried to be thorough and detailed, and I've also tried to, like, provide timestamps and stuff for people who want to go, like, verify it. But, I seriously doubt that this video is going to, like, blow up or anything, but, like, for anybody who sees this and is on the fence about Universal Naruto and wants to continue to, like, spread the gospel, so to speak, can we please just move on? Like, can we please just, like, agree, like, and challenge me on any of this if you disagree? Like, I'm not preaching here. Like, I'm sharing my thoughts, right? But, like, maybe we could just, like, look for ways to kind of consolidate our views instead of trying to, draw lines in the sand. Would that be possible? Does this seem fair? I feel like I've put enough effort into trying to find the compromise to justify us, like, moving the fuck on at this point. But that might be naive of me. Anyway, you need to inhale air for a second and rechat, and then I'll talk about connections real quick before we wrap up for the night. Okay. So, let's see. Loha says you're trolling. Oh, man. I'm a little disappointed, but that's okay. In our headcanon, together as a community, we can christen them Sari and Mandi, and I think that would be just fine. Loha said, I had no idea about this excellent Hanzo upscale till now. Yeah, Hanzo objectively scales to like twice over KCM2 Naruto, or KCM2 Menma, by the way, with his summons. So I actually don't know if Menma ever does, like, Sage mode training. Probably not. So it's not like a one-to-one thing, but it's fucking KCM2. So he's, like, glowing and shit. He has the lines and everything. So yeah. Lois says, I accept I accept this headcanon as well. Excellent. I'm glad we're on the same page about the important stuff. Hobby Horse says, time to explore the individual sentience of shadow clones and dream space people. I mean, like, literally, like, that's one thing that I forgot to mention is that, so when Obito goes into the dream world in Road to Ninja, he shows up and, like, I don't think I have the scan here or the screenshot here, but, like, there's a scene where he, like, meets up with Dreamverse Itachi, and he's like, Itachi turns around and he's like, hey, I don't know who the fuck you are, but step off. And Obito says, like, oh, even in a dream world you have troublesome ocular abilities, and he, like, runs away. So I mean, like, that to me implies that that to a certain extent the people that he's created, or, like, the versions of people that he's created, have some kind of autonomy. Like, it's not literally like Naruto's just, like, sitting in a chair and he's been hypnotized and everything is just his brain creating sensory lies internally. Like, there's something more to it. There's something going on with the chakra that is more powerful than just hypnosis here, right? I think that's fair to say. If it was just a matter of hypnotizing, he wouldn't need the fucking 7 Biju. It has to be more important, more powerful, grander in scale than that, right? That being said, I feel like if I created a video game world and I was the programmer and, like, the author of the video game world, and then I created an avatar for myself and I jumped into the game and fought a boss, that boss could still kick my ass, even though I knew all the attacks it was going to make, even though I had programmed it. I knew its limitations. I knew the strategies, whatever. Even though I could go in and give myself a cheat code potentially to make myself stronger, there's still a chance that I jump into the game and it kicks my ass. Because even though I programmed it, it still has its rules, and then I need to abide by those rules when I log into the software, whatever you want to call it. So I do think it's kind of like the Matrix, if you've seen that movie. And if you haven't, go watch it because it's great. But it's like if you get plugged into the Matrix, even if you know it's all a fantasy or an illusion, or even if you write your own like custom Matrix style software, that software still has rules that you might not be able to fully break or bend, even if you're aware of them. So I think that could be a way of consolidating this. I think there is a scan of one of the like end of chapter or end of volume like blurbs from Kishimoto where he talks about his love of cinema, and I think he explicitly mentions being inspired by the Matrix, but I wasn't able to find it in time for the stream, so you're gonna just not take that with a grain of salt. Loha says Kisame was part of the news film crew as a sidekick. I guess, yeah, I wouldn't be surprised, honestly. Megok says, all right, gang, gotta get back to editing. I'll catch you guys for the Thursday stream. Yeah, it sounds great, man. Good luck with the editing. Congratulations again on all the awesome work that you've been doing. Thank you so much for stopping by, and have a great start to your week. Okay, so the last thing to kind of pull this all together that I want to go over, that was something that Key mentioned in his video, was that so we talked about the idea of the Tsukuyomi space being like a real physical tangible space or something like that. And the argumentation, I think I mentioned before, I forget, that usually kind of accompanies the idea that the Tsukuyomi could be a universal feat, is that in Road to Ninja, Obito creates this real physical space, which apparently is a universe. Then in Boruto Connections, I'll just call it Connections, in the video game, this other character, Nanashi, also creates a real physical space, so that's also like a universe level feat. And then, since we already have two other examples of the Tsukuyomi creating physical spaces, then of course, by the time Madara comes around, like Jubi Madara, then the spaces that he's creating are also physical spaces and real universes too, right? We already have a precedent, so it makes sense that this would be the case for Madara as well. Well, the thing about that is that I've tried, I hope I've succeeded in disputing the credibility of that statement about the limited Tsukuyomi, but now let's talk about Nanashi's Tsukuyomi, aka I think it's called the Engraved Tsukuyomi. So this is coming from the video game, as I mentioned before. I think it's literally called like Naruto X Boruto Ninja Storm Connections. It's the most recent Ninja Storm game. PS4, PS5, PC. It's on a bunch of different platforms. I haven't played through the entire game myself, but there are playthroughs that you can watch on YouTube, and I've included a couple of examples. Gamer's Little Playground, this is the title of the video, and then Boruto Story Naruto X Boruto Ultimate Ninja, right, on Game Deus. So shout out to both of those creators. Thank you very much for uploading those things and making them available. And I've tried to include time codes as well with screenshots if you want to jump to specific parts of the video. I will give a very brief summary of what happens. We probably won't go through all of this stuff, but I do want to at least explain what is being discussed with regards to the Tsukuyomi specifically. Okay, so this takes place, I think, after, before Momoshiki shows up in the Boruto timeline. I'm not 100% sure about that. But, like, Toneri is there, so it happens after the last, obviously. And it is, I think, the first time that Boruto meets up with Toneri, although I'm not 100% sure how that fits into like the Nue timeline. So let's just say it happens sometime around there. And the plot of the game, I'm going to spoil all this, by the way, is that there is a video game console called Ninja Heroes, and here it is. And the video game console comes with a physical headset and a controller and a game installed on it called Ninja Heroes, right? And this is a physical, tangible video game console that exists inside the Boruto universe that they can pick up and play. My voice is cracking, 1 second. Hydrate a little. Okay, so Boruto picks it up, and he puts on the headset, and he is transported, quote unquote, into this actual physical world. Or, excuse me, let me not say, say that. He's transported into this place. At the moment, he thinks that what it is an online video game. It's literally basically like a Fortnite lobby, right? Like you put on the headset, you pick up the controller, you're physically controlling it, you're playing through the world, and you are spawned into this lobby with other people. You will notice that here's Kankuro, here's Sai, here's I think Guy, and then here's Kakuzu. And the reason we're seeing all these characters here is because these are just random people from Konoha, shinobi, and also citizens, like Katasuke plays in this game, and they're picking avatars and they're running around in this virtual space, right? And then they can do missions, and so it's basically like a version of Storm inside the Storm universe, right? So here Boruto says this is Ninja Heroes virtual world, right? They call, I think they specifically call it like, fuck, I'm gonna butcher the pronunciation, but it's like Vachuaru no Sekai, right? They kind of sound, yeah, Vacharu Kukan, which is virtual space. If you listen to the Japanese version of it, or virtual world or something like that, right? Let me be sure about that. I want to make sure that I'm getting that right. I get confused about those things. Okay, so yeah, Kukan can mean space, room, or airspace. That's right. Okay, and I think it was on. Let's see. They say Jisho is usually pretty good, right? So yeah, space, room, airspace, space, inside of space, sense of space, spatial gradient. Okay, so when the characters refer to this virtual space, what the phrasing they use in Japanese, and feel free to go to these scenes and verify if you like, is Vacharu Kukan, which means like virtual space, virtual reality, basically, right? Okay, so at the end of playing this video game, every time the session is done and they log out, Boruto winds up saying he's so tired. Like they get very fatigued after doing so. And eventually they start to notice that people are collapsing and they start to get suspicious and wonder, like, what the fuck is going on, right? And you can see that, like, it's Shikadai's little avatar is over here. I think he's playing as Deidara. I forget exactly, but, like, Boruto, or maybe he's playing as Gaara, and then Boruto is playing as Naruto, and Mitsuki's playing as Orochimaru, etc., right? So, as the story progresses, all of a sudden they see at one night they see a pattern on the moon that looks like a Sharingan, Mangekyo Sharingan pattern. And what happens is that a bunch of people in the real world get this pattern on their wrists or on their hands, and they're branded with it. And then all of a sudden they start acting kind of weird, and they all start going to war. So like Naruto gets like a weird look in his eyes, and a bunch of other people do too, and they start mobilizing and getting ready to go to war. And it's really weird. They're all acting really out of character. Right. So meanwhile, we get this shot of this like laboratory looking thing, and we see a screenshot of over here of what appears to be like a space that looks like Konoha. We see a map of the ninja world, and then we see a footage of this Tsukuyomi over here, right? This is the main villain. His name is Mertz, and this is a guy who used to work with Katasuke, who ran away from the lab and stole some scientific ninja tools and stuff like that, and has basically collaborating with this shadowy organization called Zero. We don't have to worry about that too much. Anyway, more to the point, Boruto meets this character called Nanashi, and she's the one who's cast this infinite Tsukuyomi. And it is specifically referred to alternately as the infinite Tsukuyomi or the engraved Tsukuyomi. It is explicitly a Tsukuyomi, and it is cast in the real world and is affecting people in the real world. But then Boruto, in the form of his Naruto avatar, goes into the virtual space, back into the online video game, and talks to this character Nanashi, who's showing up as her real self in the virtual space, and is talking to her about it. And she's like, hey, I think there's some people who are getting sick in the real world. I want to know what's going on. I want to understand what's happening here. Can you help me out? Sasuke in the real world notices that, okay, this is actually an infinite Tsukuyomi that's cast. So here's some evidence that it is actually a real infinite Tsukuyomi. Naruto is under the effects of the infinite Tsukuyomi. He's starting to lose his memories. His head's getting fucked with, blah, blah, blah. Okay, it's a real big problem. So now they're in this situation where everything's kind of fucked up. People are getting exhausted from playing this video game, and they're trying to figure out what's happening and how it's connected to this infinite Tsukuyomi that happens in the sky. Okay, notice that sometimes it's in quotation marks too, because they're still figuring it out. So Sasuke meets up with the other characters. Now they're in the real world, and they're all discussing what's happening, trying to figure it out. And so this is the discussion that they have. Sarada says there's something else when that light shined, meaning this light. This sort of mark appeared on everyone like a blemish. That was the sigil or the like symbol that I was talking about before, right? Katasuke shows up, and he's got like a nerd. He's got a copy of Ninja Heroes there with him, and he explains to the group that Ninja Heroes is a virtual online game that got popular really quickly recently. If you put on this special equipment, you enter the virtual space, which he calls like Vacharu Kukan, and you can do all sorts of things there, right? Like, let's not think about what exactly Katasuke is trying to do in the virtual world. Let's just move right along and say, so he calls is again, yeah. So Sasuke, when he's referring to this alternate world, he either calls it Betsu no Kukan. Betsu, I think, means other or second, and then he sometimes he calls it Genjutsu Sekai, which means Genjutsu world, right? So the terms that are being used here are Kukan or Sekai, or even like Genjutsu Sekai. So Katasuke describes it as being a virtual space, being like another world that's different than the real world. So he's creating a distinction between the virtual space and the real space. Sasuke calls it a Genjutsu world, and he uses the term Genjutsu Kukan. And then Mitsuki says that the whole ninja world is acting strange, and so they're trying to figure it out, right? So Sasuke says, yeah, so basically everybody in the world is acting weird except for people who were playing Ninja Heroes when the Infinite Tsukuyomi went off. So if you were plugged into the virtual reality headset thing and you were actively in the game world, then you weren't affected by the Infinite Tsukuyomi. You didn't start acting weird and wanting to go to war. You didn't get that mark on your hand. So Sasuke says that light, meaning the light from the Infinite Tsukuyomi, couldn't be blocked by any ordinary means. You need a special jutsu like mine to interrupt it or to not be there to begin with. Right, because if you're in another space, if you're absent, then you can't be affected by the light from the Tsukuyomi anyway, right? So he's speculating that maybe the people themselves weren't actually there, which is why they weren't affected by the Tsukuyomi. So Boruto and Sarada and Mitsuki, that's why they were spared from it, so to speak. So he says, if you weren't there, then it wouldn't be a stretch to think that there was something to the game itself, right? Fair. So he turns on his Mangekyo or whatever, and he looks at the headset, and he sees inside the headset this sigil, which kind of looks like a summoning jutsu, right? A sigil. So he says it looks like a special one similar to a summoning. Now in Key's video, we'll go back to this next week or the week after, but in Key's video, he said that it was a summoning jutsu or something like that, I think. I don't want to misquote him, but like the idea is that like this is being represented as a summoning formula that physically transports people. And that's the initial theory. Sasuke says, I don't know what jutsu it's based on, but I think we can assume that it has the power to transport something. And then this is where people say, okay, so this is physically transporting people to a physical reality that was created with genjutsu, just like Road to Ninja. And this is sometimes where people stop and get confused. We're almost done. We have a couple of more things to go over, right? Because there's a bit more context that's it's important to understand here. So what Sasuke says is that when they were transported to the realm of the, Betsu no Sekai or whatever, that they weren't really on this side. They weren't really in the real world, whatever that means. They were actually in a different space, sent there by the transportation jutsu inscription set to that console. Okay, so R.I.P. John the Maven. Like, I clearly was capping this whole time about the physical reality and stuff. I can end the stream right now, right? Well, first of all, interesting that Sasuke also says in Japanese chigao kukan, which I think chigao means like wrong or like incorrect or something like that, or like a lie. So he's saying it's like the fake space or the wrong space, right? Referring to, or wrong world, whatever, referring to the virtual reality. But then Sarada actually says something useful and says, but doesn't transportation usually mean moving the entire body? Not knowing the details of the jutsu, says Katasuke, that is it possible the jutsu is only transporting the mind? Mitsuki says, in other words, the mark from the moonlight is introduced by the mind and not the body. If our minds are being transported, that means that space was, and Boruto is stupid and doesn't get it. It turns out that our minds were transported to, quote-unquote, some other space, not in the game, and playing there. However, that can only be possible if there's a space to bring in the minds. So, I don't remember if I included it. Sarada also has a line where she says something along the lines of, if people's bodies were physically transported and physically brought to another space, then other people would notice that everybody was going missing and would freak out. So it can't be a physical transportation jutsu like a summoning formula, because then everybody would go missing, the headsets would fall to the ground, everybody would freak out. So it's got to be something else, right? So now they're trying to figure out what that is. And another instance of the word kukan, right? So here's what Sasuke says in response to that. He says, an Uchiha could do it. the records say that aside from Yachihoko, which is another jutsu that's related to what's going on in the plot, this person had jutsu such as Tsukuyomi and Amaterasu implanted. He's talking about some Uchiha who apparently was alive in the past and was sealed, and he thinks that this person could potentially do this. Um, and then he describes Sarada says, "What the fuck is a Tsukuyomi?" And Sasuke says the Tsukuyomi is a genjutsu where a user creates a space in full control of its shape, time, and rules, and then brings in a third party. The jutsu is primarily used to inflict psychological damage on your opponent. It would be safe to assume that only someone with Uchiha abilities could control the jutsu on the scale of that infinite Tsukuyomi. And the ninja hero space we played in was created by that Tsukuyomi and Uchiha clan jutsu. So, the reason why bringing all of this up, and we're almost done, I'm going to mention some stuff here, but we're almost done, is that it does seem like, to a certain extent at least, hang on, let me reset this, that the Tsukuyomi is capable of creating a space. And that space does exist in some sort of persistent manner. Because eventually, do I actually have the panel? Yeah, so eventually, the character Nanashi, this is the Uchiha character who created the space, right? It is revealed that Nanashi herself used the Tsukuyomi to create a dream world, to create a virtual reality space. And using a combination of the Tsukuyomi and I believe that these headsets actually count technically as scientific ninja tools, right? And the collaboration of one of Katasuke's former peers who then ran away, and whatever equipment that they have here, the combination of all of those things was actually able to create some sort of actual persistent space. When people put on the headsets, their minds are quote-unquote transported into this genjutsu space. So rather than having every single one of them have a jutsu cast upon them individually or whatever, they are instead the fucking headsets work as a conduit to transfer their minds into the shared delusion or reality or space or whatever of Ninja Heroes, the game world. Now, funny enough, Mertz over here is, without getting too deep into it, he's a successor of Pain. He wants to kind of accomplish what Pain failed to accomplish. And it is kind of cool that this device that they have in the background over here looks a lot like the ones that Pain's bodies, he stores the paths in. You know what I mean? I forget where it is, but right before he goes to hunt Jiraiya, he brings one of his paths in and plugs it into something that looks like this. So I think what's happening here is quite literally they created a Naruto Universe matrix. Nanashi used these scientific ninja tools and her own Uchiha abilities to create a persistent, non-real, non-literal, non-physical space. And it's empowered by this technology as well. She can choose to leave the space if she wants to. Other people can choose to sign into the space and also leave the space when they want to. And it's so seamless that it seems basically they don't even notice that their minds have been transported to that space. They think they're just in this highly immersive virtual reality. What's interesting is that when Nanashi gets tired of dealing with them, she gets into a fight with the characters, and then she fucks off, she leaves them in that space, she then, tells Mertz, the plan is already going smoothly, I think I've done enough, there's no need to monitor that side anymore. So she gets out of this, big contraption, she unplugs herself from the Matrix, and then she's like, you guys don't need to watch what's happening there. So it seems to me like the space itself continues to exist to a certain extent, or even just in general, even when she leaves it, and can still be monitored and can still be interacted with, which makes sense, right? She can just fuck off and other people can still play the game. It doesn't shut down the servers. So it is oh yeah, so that's just another representation of the map of the Shinobi world. So I think, Nanashi herself, let me just wrap this up and then I'll just kind of put everything together, right? So in a subsequent, or just before Nanashi fucks off, Boruto, this is Boruto with his avatar. You can kind of see his face there, right? These are Boruto, Sarada, and Mitsuki in their avatars, and they're in the virtual space again. And Boruto says this place isn't a virtual game space, it's a genjutsu world created by someone. And again, he uses the term Vacharu Sekai da. They're using an Uchiha ability called the Tsukuyomi to make it possible. What did I say here? Genjutsu Kukan is how they refer to the world. She uses the term Kukan here again. Nanashi says Kukan and Sekai, and basically the purpose of her doing it and the reason why people are getting tired is because she's draining chakra from them while they're in the game space. That's why the space was set with chakra draining device to use for the recovery. She uses Kukan again over here, etc., etc. Right? She's basically just like revealing her evil plan and twirling her mustache over here. And then once she does this, this is what happens to the virtual space, right? This is the Road to Ninja world. This is what it looks like. And then she says, like, actually, fuck this, right? And we see it, like, quote unquote, disintegrating. She snaps her fingers. She calls the space Kukan. And then it starts to look like this. And she says, I'm freely in control of your temporary forms and this space. In any case, being able to change the space all, or what'd she say here? Yeah, Kukan again. In any case, being able to change the space all at once. Blah, 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 blah. She has the advantage in the space. Okay, so again, do you think it's more realistic? Like, honest, I mean, like, obviously I think I know the answer, but I think it's more realistic that this is an actual physical entire universe that physically really exists, and that Nanashi has the energetic power with her fingers to snap her fingers and cause the borders of an entire reality to disintegrate, destroying everything in the entire universe with a snap of her fingers, except for one particular realm, which then she can fill with, well, I guess let's just go ahead and call this a starry sky, and fill it with, like, I don't know, trillions of celestial bodies with a snap of her fingers. Or is this a fucking video game that was made out of genjutsu? Is this a non-literal, ethereal, non-physical space that was still persistent, that was still extant, that is still real, that has some kind of tangible reality? Maybe it's like chakra floating in another dimension. I don't know. Maybe it's chakra inside a computer that's distributed through the cloud, right? It's like a chakra information cloud or something. But it's not a literal, full, entire ass universe. It's something that's empowered by the Tsukuyomi. And again, like, you could just look at something like Connections and say, well, it's not canon, it's just a stupid video game, fuck it. But I think that's boring. I think it's, like, not as fun. I think it's more fun to try and put it together. But you see, it's not even all that hard to just try to find a way to go through it, understand it, and then be like, okay, so this is how we merge these two things, right? Like, this is how we consolidate and bring everything together. By just saying, you know, it can still be a space, it can still be real, it can still be extant, it can still be persistent, and it can still be created with a powerful genjutsu, but at the same time not be a literal universe filled with, like, trillions upon trillions upon trillions upon trillions of celestial bodies, right? Like, that's fair, right? Anyway, oh, I think that's it. I think that's basically what I wanted to cover tonight. There's a couple of little Easter eggs. I'll talk about this more later. I think Storm Connections actually has, like, a clue as to what the cracks and you know, rifts in time are that Tonari is fixing. And there's definitely more that we can talk about here. There's a whole, like, time travel arc and shit that happens with Tonari. I think I put a note here because there's, like, a cutscene where Tonari says the ninja world was pulled into his dream, right? So, okay, here's another mention of the term dream. I think I sort of pedantically, like, yeah, wrote down every single time I saw a word, or like I saw a word that could potentially be either universe or world. So, like, here, this is Tonari. I don't, in, like, a little spirit blob form, but it's him. It just hasn't revealed himself yet. But Mitsuki, like, goes into this, like, this is part of the VR space. Like, a crack opens up in the VR space and they go into, like, the subspace or whatever. Mitsuki says everything looks like the real world. And what he says is, like, I think he says Genjitsu Sekai, not Genjutsu Sekai, like the real world. But he uses the term Sekai. And then Tonari also says, I don't remember what the word he says here. I have to go back and look at this because I didn't recognize what he was saying. But then over here, in English, the subtitles are, if we use this mysterious space's unique properties, blah, blah, blah. He calls it, like, Fushigi no Kukan. And Fushigi, I think, means illusion. Let me just check that. Fushigi. Oh, wonderful, marvelous, strange, incredible, amazing, etc. Right? So, again, like, all of the fucking people who worked on the manga and the anime and the books and the novels, and, like, the manga adaptations and the tie-ins and the video games, People have had plenty of fucking opportunities to use the term universe. I could not find a single goddamn example of anybody using the actual term universe, like Uchu or whatever it is. The only one time that I've ever seen the term universe come up was in the Viz translation of Orochimaru Space. And I know that nobody's out there arguing that that motherfucker like belched out quadrillions of black holes into that little mind transference space. So I think I've done my due fucking diligence. Maybe I can actually sleep tonight. Okay, so with that being said, let me check chat. I know I haven't read it in a while. I'm sorry for keeping you guys waiting. And then I'm probably gonna wrap it up for the night. I'm actually kind of like impressed, low key, that we were able to get through that, because there's a lot of stuff, and we spent the entire like 4.5 hours of last stream just talking about the first 3 minutes of Key's video. So kudos to us for actually staying on task tonight. Good job, team. So let's see. Saria says, I found it extremely funny that you said Toneri is here, so it's after the last, but Boruto being as old as he is now shows this as well. Oh, yeah, that's probably a good point. Yep. Talk about fucking missing the, what's the expression, missing the forest for the trees, or is it vice versa? I'm tired. But yeah, I see your point, for sure. No, I'll give you a little Kaguya. Here, you can have, like, weird, creepy, uncanny valley CGI Kaguya to round out the evening. So I did say Kaguya was coming next weekend, and we're gonna talk about Kaguya's dimensions and like space-time stuff exclusively next week. No more fucking Road to Ninja. We're done with that. Next week is all gonna be about Kaguya stuff and space-time stuff. So looking forward to that. So I'm not making fun of it, by the way. I just find it funny you ignored Boruto's existence. Yeah, I mean, it is kind of funny, right? Like, just that was where my my horse blinders were for this evening, I suppose. Katasuke is always involved in some shit. Yeah, that motherfucker is always up to something. If he had like just paid more attention to his subordinates, then none of the shit in in this would have happened, at least not the same way. So that's kind of unfortunate. We need to planetary devastation, Katasuke. Honestly, he would probably just be excited to be involved. I think, like, ooh, an excellent opportunity for some research. When he got like up until the point where he gets crushed by the gravity well. Hobby Horse says, but I think that's boring. It's not as fun. Power scalars everywhere. Yeah, well, here's the thing. Like, I genuinely am. Look, I have that sort of knee-jerk, what do you call it, like backfire effect thing, where when I hear a provocative take, like I was sort of unfair to Mello, I think, the other day. I wasn't talking to him directly, but I was listening to the Walkie Talkie podcast, and it started off with him saying something like, you know, I have demonstrated that, like, extensively, that Boruto is a multiverse. Now, I don't think Boruto is a multiverse, and the reason why is because I've heard people make some disingenuous arguments around 10 directions, and I really don't like those arguments, and I think they were made in bad faith, and so I just kind of have gravitated towards, or like wound up with the perspective of it's not a multiverse. And when I heard him say that, I was like, oh shit, I'm gonna have to like get into this next, because I guess this is the new meta. You know, now we're done talking about Universal Naruto, now we're gonna have to talk about fucking multiverse stuff. And I had a really negative backfire effect that was completely unwarranted, because as he pointed out later in the video, like, not to me specifically, but like I hadn't actually heard his position and heard his arguments. I was just responding negatively to it because of my own bias, and because it sounded outrageous, and because it was outrageous, I wasn't being fair and actually hearing the position, right? And so that is like a bias that I have to be aware of. And it is really fun to just be like, hey, everybody, look at that thing. That's obviously dumb. Let's all laugh at it. Ha ha ha, look how smart I am, right? And like, honestly, that's half of the fun of listening to Noodle's debates and stuff, is just waiting, like, the play a drinking game, or like take a shot every time Noodle says something completely fucking preposterous and out of pocket, right? It's just like, it's fun to like pause the recording being like, what the fuck did he say this time? But at the end of the day, right, like, it's worth listening to the arguments. It's worth going through and seeing if you could find some common ground. And I think, like, I would much prefer to just, I mean, obviously there are some exceptions, but I like to just operate from the position of assuming that people are talking in good faith and even if they have a take that I find outrageous or whatever, that they got there through a misunderstanding. I like to start from that place and see if we can clear up the misunderstanding, because maybe it's my misunderstanding, maybe I'm the one who got it wrong, and if we can collaborate before like arguing, then we can figure it out. So I would love, rather than to just say, like it's just too easy to be like, well, this is the anime and I read the manga, the manga's the primary canon, so fuck your anime, get the fuck out of here with that. It doesn't matter, it doesn't count. This is just a novel, it doesn't count. No, like I don't think that I think that Boruto the Roto Ninja movie is kind of lame. I don't like it. I don't think it's very good. I At least compared to some of the other ones. Obviously, there were a lot of people that worked hard on it, and like I respect their talent and their involvement, but I don't really enjoy that movie. I don't think it fits in with the main timeline. I don't think it should be considered part of the main canon, but there's still cool shit in it. Menma's cool. Like there's some cool fights. There's some interesting and funny moments, and we can still learn things about the universe. And if we can find a way to take the elements of the story that are like salient and like part of the main, like, that we can learn things from, and fit them together with the main canon, why not? Like, why not try to develop like a coherent picture that involves as many of the different interpretations as possible? The shit that like gets to me is just taking stuff out of context and being like, fucking Nanashi created a world. Wait, another word for world is parallel reality. Reality is part of the universe. Universal. Nanashi is universal confirmed. So Kid Boruto, pre-Momoshiki arc, Kid Boruto is also universal because he can clash with Sarada. And universal specifically means, at minimum, outputting enough power to destroy trillions of black holes and stars. And like, what the fuck does that add, actually? Does that actually enhance your reading of the story? Like, a genuine open question to anybody listening to this, like, does reading through Boruto with like 12-year-old little kid Boruto and genuinely believing in your heart that he could destroy the entire universe with like one of his Rasengan, does that make the story better? Does that make it more enjoyable? Does that enhance things? Like, what does that add to your experience of the media? How does it interface with like how is it impressive that adult or like old teen Boruto or whatever comes up with Uzuhiko that uses the rotation of the planet when he can destroy the entire universe, or has the AP to be able to do that? Maybe he can't do it with a DC attack, but if he's got universal AP, then why is it impressive that he can make like what's his name, Jura, nauseous by spinning around with the Earth's axis rotation? The Earth's axial rotation has like no relevant energy output compared to like a black hole. It's not even fucking part of the same conversation. It doesn't matter at all, right? So like, how does that not ruin your view of the series? But we can try to find the elements from each of those parts and take the best parts of it and make like a tapestry, to sound a little pretentious, out of the good and not poo poo fuck bad shit ass parts. I'm really tired now. I'm gonna stop talking. So thank you very much for coming with me on this recursive journey through Universal Naruto. Again, next week we're going to continue, and I think next week's probably going to be the last stream on this topic. Maybe if you guys want to, we'll do one more after that where we'll actually talk about Key's video. Like, we can go through and like respond to it bit by bit, if that's fun for people. But next time we're going to be talking, really want to talk about spatial dimensions and Kaguya's dimensions and all of that stuff. So it'll be more heavily focused on Kaguya specifically. I don't want to spoil anything, but I'm excited to talk about how we can use frogs for Kaguya scaling. I'm really excited about that. And then we'll kind of move on from there and see where things take us. So thank you so much. I really appreciate the conversation, the engagement, and I hope you guys have a great rest of your weekend, start to your week. Sorry, it says Dispo flexing that he surpassed the speed of light in Dragon Ball Super. Yeah, exactly. I mean, like, he's great, but does he really compare to Kid Boruto? I don't think so. Yeah. Anyway, thank you so much and have a great night, everybody.